I don't think that makes a difference either way. What's important is the ideas we advocate for behind the label of socialism, not the fact that it's socialism. And Mad
Yeah.
Lad can agree or disagree
Valid.
with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
that's
fine.
valid.
So, like, what do you think the benefits of co-ops are then?
I mean, cooperative ownership means that like the profits, the risk, and everything is shared amongst everyone that works at the organization, right?
Mhm.
The risk and the reward are equally distributed. Not to say that it's
Yeah.
impossible for a cooperative organization to fail. Like you could have cooperative organizations that are too afraid to take risks because, like, their livelihoods are attached to it, right? For example, but that doesn't necessarily inherently mean that it's like a bad system. You'd have to balance out like the lack of risk take. Like folks who a corporation that is run by workers, I feel like would be more risk adverse than a corporation that's run by folks who are trying to like thicken the value of the stock, right? So you have to do to min bat. Oh,
Kind of. Yeah.
And you
So,
can even get into that a little bit because when you would have like an entire like co-op dominated economy, you'll have co-ops that are more likely to take risks than other cooperatives as well.
true.
I think the difference comes in that in one where the business is owned by a bunch of by stakeholders rather than the workers, is those stakeholders can move to a different company very easily. You sell your stocks, you buy different stocks. Whereas if you're a worker there and you own part of it, then you're kind of stuck, aren't you? You work for this company. It's a lot harder to move your job than it is to sell some stocks and buy some new ones.
Wait,
But
why?
both
I'm
of-
sorry. Why does it have to be that way? I'm confused here.
What?
Like
Why
you're
is it
so you're
easier
saying
to sell
that
some
so you're
stocks?
saying like if you have a partial stake in the ownership, right? So you have shares in X company that you work for because you inherently work for it.
Yeah.
You're implying that because you have like that specific tie, it's going to be harder to find a new job.
No. I'm saying it's harder to change your ownership. So if all you do is own and you don't work there and you don't have to work there to own it, it's quite easy to sell your stocks because and then buy other ones. Whereas if you can only have stocks, but controlling shares because you work there, it's a lot harder to move your job than it is to sell something and buy something different.
Well, I don't know about Mad Lad as well. I personally allow for the having non-ownership stock. So if that's like the concern,
So
then
you
No,
also
you-
sell
Hey, Richard, I think what you said is
shares.
that it would be hard for me, like if I were to have ownings or controlling stock in a cooperative, that it would be hard for me if I wanted to do it, like go work in another industry completely. It would be hard for me to move to that industry because I have controlling stock in this cooperative already. Right?
Is that what you're
So,
saying?
like,
If
I think
we're
that's what you
saying-
said, right?
No, it's not about the. It's not harder to move your job. It's harder to move your stock ownership
sure.
because
Well,
you can only
and
do
that-
it if you work.
So
there.
you want to take? So let me get this straight. So you want to take the value of your stock ownership. So let's say you work at like Meat Pies United or something. Okay,
Professor
Meat
Meat
Pies
Pies
United.
United. I'm switching to my other mic so I can pace while talking here.
Okay.
So you work for
We're
Meat
getting a
Pies
bit of an
United,
echo.
that's much worse.
and you've got like they're doing really well. They make
I hate
$50,000
it.
a year.
Can you go back to where we were? No, Mad Lad, I can't do it.
You want
You're
the
kill-
new,
It's a really bad mic.
Yeah,
with the
it's
echo.
fine.
terrible.
God damn it! But I need a pace. But all right, fine. So you're working for Meat Pies United. It's making $50K a year. And like let's say there's like 5 of you constructing these wonderful meat pies, and like your cut's like 10 grand a year or something, right? And then you decided that you're tired of making meat pies and you want to like get into gun manufacturing, okay? And so you want to work for a bigger $2 million a year co-op making guns, firearms, whatever. And there's like 1,000 people working for the firm, and you want to be one additional person, and you want to get a cut in the profits, et cetera, right? So like you're saying that it would be harder to go from meat pies to gun manufacturing as a job if there's like stock transfer involved. Is that like the
I'm
point,
not
or-
talking about changing jobs. So I think you've misunderstood me there. I'm talking about
okay.
changing your stock ownership. However, you can own in a co-op system, you own controlling shares in the stock based on if you work there. So you also have to move your job, which makes it harder.
For controlling shares.
So basically, the contention is should cooperatives only offer stocks to people who work for the cooperative, or should it be something that could be like private speculation on the stock too?
That would be
I
a
guess like the
separate
question
thing.
is, I don't know
I'm assuming
why.
you don't allow that. Don't allow other people to have controlling shares, which is why I'm saying controlling shares. I'm not just saying shares. I'm saying
It also
controlling
that
shares.
also depends on
So
which type of
if you're
cooperative you're talking about.
yeah,
Because you can have like 50% ownership models, you can have 75% and sell some portion of the controlling shares.
I'm just trying
That's
to figure out
also
like
but
why
the
couldn't we
point
have
is
venture
that
capital or
stock
venture
liquidity is
socialism? I
harder
guess.
in a co-op system than in a non-co-op system.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess because we have to technically map out like
Yeah.
what it would look like. Sure.
Well, it's that you would have to change your job as well to change your stock.
Well, assuming that the thing is, like, I'm not inherently married to this idea that like shares can only be like what you like. You don't necessarily only have to be an active participant to be able to own shares in something. I feel
Controlling
like.
shares we're talking about.
Well, controlling shares. So, like, basically having a vote in how a business or cooperative operates. Is that your point? So, like, one share is a controlling share, right? Like, just to be
You
clear.
also
So
haven't
there are
claimed how
different
this is
types
bad
of shares. You can
examples,
have
so-
like non-voting shares and voting shares. So you can have shares that give you a vote in decisions of the company and shares that don't give you a vote. Most co-ops that would like to consider themselves like worker-owned would only give non-workers non-voting shares.
Right.
Because otherwise, a capitalist could come and buy out your
Truly
co-op,
worker
and then
owned,
you're not
yeah.
really worker-owned anymore. You're privately owned by some person who doesn't work for the company.
I
So
mentioned before there's complications in that as well, but continue.
Right, because you could literally like restrict the number of votes to like percentage of investment or something or whatever.
Because,
right?
well,
And
the
you-
reason there's complications to that is because it can be a majority-owned worker business rather than a fully-owned worker business.
right. So I mean, you could like min max it and like figure out like how
But
to.
in the interest of not making it really complicated, should we talk about one
That's what I
where
was trying to-
you can't have, you can't buy voting shares?
Well, so here's the thing. We could simplify the discussion and make it easier for us to say, hey, this is why the system won't work. But I think we can all agree, just to front load this, I think we can agree that like for a system to be optimal, there has to be some sense of compromise and ability to be flexible, right?
Okay, so let's say it is a 50-50. Those 50% of the shares would still be less liquid, right?
Okay.
So there is less liquidity in it. And the problem with having low levels of liquidity, ability to like change shares and stocks.
Well, low and half is two different things, though, right? Like less versus low.
So it's not going to be quite as illiquid because only 50% of the controlling shares are limited in this way, but it's still less liquid. Yeah. So that would mean that risk management is now harder because it's harder for companies not to basically end up inflating their own stocks, and you run into problems of like bubbles forming much more.
Yeah, I think Mad Lad agreed with that earlier, that there's a higher risk. There's higher risk in general for every person involved generally.
Well,
And
yeah, so each
generally
individual will
what-
be like,
You go.
go ahead.
You go.
I was gonna say, so like each individual would be like less likely to want to take certain risks, right? So it would definitely impact the liquidity of shares, et cetera, et cetera. But like I would also say that it would be less risky so like in the short term there'd be like less risk taken, and I could see in the long term how with fewer risks being taken by a business, how like it creates risk in and of itself, because if you're being consistent and the same across decades, something's got to give, something's got to crack.
Yeah, that was the point I was trying to get to. Like that, although people want to be less risk taking, that can lead to more risk actually being taken.
Oh, right.
Sure. I'm curious, like, what you mean. Like, what are you concerned? Give me an example of what you're concerned about with this risk taking, like, not happening. Just give me an example so I know where you're coming from.
So the problem would be that you've got a bunch of co-ops that are being run in a way that isn't going to think about their long-term best interests because they're too busy playing it safe.
That's
And
not
that leads to
necessarily
a
the
bunch
case,
of that leads to the company going under and a bunch of people having, because what usually happens in co-ops is instead of them just collapsing, they reduce the pay for their workers because that's how that works. And then the pay gets reduced and reduced and reduced, and it reaches the point where it's like, okay, we're now at the minimum wage. Can we reduce below that? Not really. So then we have to default. and all these
That's
people
rather
lose.
silly of a reading of worker cooperatives. You have fluctuations in the market. They'll lower in economic downturns and increase in economic upturns. If it's going out of business, it's going out of business. It's the same in capitalism or socialism.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
what I'm
like, is
saying
that
is
not
that
a
a
feature?
capitalist place would be better at like allocating those resources so it would scale up or scale down quicker, whereas a co-op
You'd
one might
think
do
that
this very
On what
slowly.
you'd think
basis,
that would then
though?
result in more worker cooperatives going out of business than capitalist firms, right? But then we have the exact opposite evidence.
Well, it's
I
quite
say,
difficult to look
like,
at this evidence because co-ops
I think
currently are not operating in the way that I'm talking about. They're operating in a private ownership kind of model where you can have a significant amount of controlling shares owned by private investors, and that means they get the benefit of capital allocation through capitalism,
But I'm not sure
which
you're
is an
talking
excellent
about
method of
worker
risk management.
cooperatives.
So
Well,
the thing that capitalism does really well is it's really good at managing risks because you have a bunch of individuals all making their own decisions about which stocks to buy and share. So you've not got one organization making all of these decisions. And when things go wrong, the people who absorb that damage are people who have a lot of capital. So they're generally not going to be like, oh, now I'm out on the street. So this risk management is the purpose of capitalism. Capitalism was born when Dutch ships wanted to be able to sail to the other side of the world and come back with spices, which was very profitable, but also very risky. You might lose the ship to pirates, or they might, just sink somewhere. So instead, they started selling not whole ships, because no one could afford to do a whole ship. They would sell shares in a ship's voyage, and then when it comes back, and that way a bunch of people can share the risk of this not making it back. And
So,
instead of buying one ship, they buy 50 between them, and then
one point in time,
more likely to make results.
so at one point in time, you have been correct that capitalism does a great job of risk management. However, even the risk management has been gamified to the point where like risk is being min-maxed and profits are being extracted from businesses at the cost of the businesses themselves, like on a regular basis, right? Like the whole like 2008 like issue that occurred, or the subsequent issues where like too big to fail is a thing, is like a direct like demonstration of like this principle where like capitalism is better at managing risks is like kind of like something of a fiction. Like really, what I would say is that the decisions are being made by like a few individuals versus more individuals in. I mean, I guess we're not going to call it socialism. We're going to call it cooperatives, right?
You can call it freedom if you'd like.
My point here, rather than arguing for the one pure system or another, is like I think we do want a mix, right? We want a healthy mix of worker owned and corporate owned, and I think you would want to have it a little bit more slanted towards the worker, because we're currently actually experiencing live what corporate ownership does, and what it is like every time there's a problem, it's swept under the rug for the most part in a lot of these big organizations. Like let's look at Activision Blizzard, for example, right? Like there were workers who were having their breast milk stolen out of the goddamn fridge, and the corporate overstructure wouldn't do anything about it until it became a sensation on Twitter, right? And then all of a sudden, oh, the PR is bad, we better do something about it. The only time corporations seem to do anything to fix the businesses that they're running to the ground because they want to extract profit is when there's a PR disaster, and like you need to have some measure of care to make things good as well. So you do need the you need workers not just cooperating, but invested, buying in, owning part of the product that's being sold to everyone. When that happens, you get a higher quality product, and you get less like demand from this corporate over hierarchy that is like literally forcing workers to do an excess of labor or an excess of anything, like investing like too much time and energy in like varying products that don't actually do anything besides like improve the bottom line, which is not necessarily better. It doesn't necessarily mean the product is better. It just means that like the PR was lined up real nicely for corporate, right?
Yeah, so like
I apologize for being rambly.
No,
It's
no,
like
that's fine.
5
I'm trying to. I think there's a few different ways we could take this, so I'm going to try and like cover.
Hey guys, so chat is asking Richard and Mad Lad if you guys have Twitch channels. Richard, do you have one?
I literally set one up
yes.
10 seconds ago. So if you want to hit
10
me up at
seconds ago?
Yield Smithy, on Twitch.
And I
Yeah,
also
I'll
want
get
to take
you-
a second. Yeah, wait, it looks like you reached your goal for tonight.
What's that?
Oh, fuck.
69
I've lost my
followers.
train of thought. Let me
Fuck
write this down.
yes.
I'll try and come back to you.
Wait, did you put it in the chat though for my stream?
I just
Oh,
shouted
did-
myself out, but I don't know if that command works.
No, no, I don't have. I don't have anything. I'm so lazy that I haven't done anything for my.
Do you want me to set you up a bot? I'll set you up a bot.
Dude,
I can
if
do
you
that.
could, I would
I need
let
to
you
set up
beat
my
me at
stream
chess.
also.
You let me beat you. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. So I
No,
That
but
is definitely
I
not
see the problems that you're pointing at about corporate not being very responsive to worker issues, and I think that the best.
It's not just worker issues though; it's also market issues. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Well, so let's talk about worker issues first. So I think their problem with responding to worker issues is that, and I'm assuming by your profile picture you're an American, is that unions
So sorry.
unions are just completely fucked, basically. But if you look at a country like Sweden, Norway, Denmark, the countries that I would like to live in terms
Countries
of their
with
like
very
economic,
strong social wealth funds.
they have strong and very
Social
strong
wealth fund.
unions as well. So
Yes,
Norway,
of course. The
It-
essence of socialism, unions. The
yeah,
essence
I'm
of work
I'm very pro
coming
union,
together.
but socialism would often put itself up as the counter to capitalism. But these countries are clearly capitalistic. So I
I
think
mean,
you can
it could
have
be
a
free
union
market.
within socialism, but what we call it doesn't really matter. I still think the worker union is the better solution.
Yeah, just look at the powers of when you give workers power over their company. Just see how many benefits you get from that.
Yeah, and
Wow.
I think this power should be based on union, not on ownership. Making the workers owners introduces a bunch of risk that doesn't need to be there.
Well, it reduces some risks and adds other risks, right? Like you're saying, like it causes long-term risks because the workers are going to be comfy and not want to change too much. But I would also point out that these corporate structures have that exact same long-term risk where they're not really going to take chances on new products. They're only going to promote the same shit over and over again. Like how many Call of Duties were released by Activision because it's a formula that works and they're not going to take any risks on new games. Or like in the movie industry, for example, how many fucking shit Transformer movies come out because they know they're going to be box office hits, even though they're shit movies overall. Like the quality of the work is like being reduced because we're just going to redo the same fucking things over and over again because we know it's profitable.
But that's what people want. It's profitable because that's what people want. And I know there are a lot of people who
it's
say that they don't want it,
because-
but that's what people want.
Well, I mean, it's profitable because it's safe, right?
Yeah,
that's
and
the point.
people want to
But safety-
people want to
Well,
consume
risk
safe
is-
media. They want to consume a movie they know they're going to
Yeah.
enjoy. Some people will
So-
go out there and
so-
risk a new movie, but not
Yeah.
most people want to watch a
And
movie
that's
they know
fine.
they're
I'm
going to
not-
enjoy.
I'm not actually challenging that point. My point is that like you get the same feature in both a corporate owned or worker owned scenario here, right? On some level, like you can't say that it's worker owned that has this specific problem because you literally see it in corporate owned structures as well.
Well, but the problem I'm talking about is the illiquidity of a co-op. Now, I want to be clear. Like, I don't think that co-ops shouldn't exist. I think that people should be able to start co-ops. That's absolutely fine. I just don't think that we should be pushing them so heavily over things like unions.
Well, we're
So-
not saying that we shouldn't encourage unions. You'll never find a socialist on earth that would say that we shouldn't encourage unions.
Yeah, I'm saying that co-ops is basically something
It
that you
can
can
be a
push for, but I
simultaneous
don't think it
thing.
will
That-
actually help.
At the moment, we don't even have enough co-ops to really find out if what you're saying could be true. So why not at least push to the level of research where we can find out if
Well,
the criticisms that you're levying might be true?
Are more co-ops not being set up under the current system?
Yeah,
Can we
that's
get-
but we have to encourage them more. And you're
I don't
saying
think
it's
we need to.
bad to encourage them.
I think the ones that work well will work well without encouragement. And if you encourage a bunch of them, like if you financially incentivize it, you're going to be
Wait, hold on.
financially incentivizing a
That's
bunch of
not
stuff that wouldn't be
true,
viable.
though,
and
because like
actually
businesses
incentivized.
are
Wait, hold on,
definitely
wait,
taking-
wait, wait. When was the first time you ever heard about a co-op?
Me,
Yeah.
a year, 2 years ago. roughly.
Okay. Did you go to business school or
No.
university for like accounting or anything
I've
like
watched
that?
a lot of lectures online, but I've not been
Okay,
to
so-
university because
I watched
I would
it,
also
so I
agree
can
that like
remember.
maybe 2 or 3 years ago was the first time I ever heard of a co-op, in the sense that like Mondragon, and there's like a pretty good reason for that, right? Because like the capitalism doesn't incentivize co-ops. There has to be incentives for this. Like traditional firms is like basically the only thing that's ever taught in business schools, and
I mean, I would say that corporate owned structures are actually incentivized, and that's like a big part of it too, right? Like, it's not just that like you have to incentivize. Like, I've known about cooperatives for 15, 20 years now, actually. Like, they've been around for a long time, and they've always been incredibly functional. It's just that, like, if you are bringing in this new structure in a place where there's already a lot of like wealth and structure attached, it's like kind of tricky, right? Like, there's a lot of incentive to not promote. There's actually, like, I would even say there's a lot of incentive to outright sabotage any sort of like experiment that involves a democracy of the workplace, as like demonstrated in history repeatedly, because like the corporate structures would prefer to have a situation where there is no they want, you know, the same things to continue to exist, because that's where the profit comes from, right? So like any system that promotes workers' rights is usually like attacked directly. We see that with what's going on with Starbucks right now, even actually, where like, you know, stores are trying to unionize, and workers who are leading the unionization efforts are being fired like willy nilly, right? And you see that in like actual government managed experiments, going as far back as like 1840s, even in France. There was a experiment with worker. Long story short, basically, workers were going to be given a lot of extra pay and rights, and the person in charge of the experiment wanted the experiment to fail. So he literally set it up so that these workers, instead of getting learning new trade skills, were basically paid an extraordinary amount of money to sit there and not do anything, and it was awful.
Yeah,
and, like, my point here.
I agree. It sucks that like there are nefarious forces going on that are trying to stop, you know, basically push back against worker progress. And I think that actually means that we need to be more considerate about where we put our political will. Do we want to put it into something like co-ops, which we're not 100% sure on, or do we want to put it onto unions, which we've seen work time and time again?
I think that's really silly.
I mean, is it not both? Like, I don't understand how this.
Richard is saying that these things aren't mutually exclusive, but they are rigorous. In other words, that like you can only push for so many things when we're talking about like political capital, and that like he's just making the position that like if we have a limited amount of resources, then maybe those resources are better spent on union efforts and co-op efforts.
Well, let's look at like what we're pushing though, right? So like if you're pushing for a union, that means you're subverting a company structure and like changing it to like make room for the unions. Whereas if you're pushing for a cooperative, you're founding an entire new organization within an industry.
Yeah, so when I say push for unions, I don't mean push for a union. I mean push for changing the law to make it easier for unions to exist.
Okay, so if you're looking for institutional recourse, that's a different type of, again, this is still a different type of effort being put out than starting your own cooperative and trying to make that cooperative thrive and like doing business exclusively through cooperative friendly. Like, for example, my banking is all credit union, because I know credit unions are, well, mostly credit unions. There's one exception. I have to do some international transfer stuff, and the credit union doesn't let me do that. But like overall, I do as much.
And that's because of regulation.
I do as much credit union related stuff for my banking because I want to support that and not banks and not corporate structures. I tend to shop at places that are more cooperative in nature. I like places that pay a living wage. So I'm literally spending my money in places that are better for workers.
Yeah,
and
that's great. That's very admirable. But I think at the end of the day, most people are going to go for the cheaper option. And it seems that these corporate structures offer the cheaper option because of their
credit over credit unions. Wait,
credit unions are not like. Credit unions are so much cheaper. Credit
unions are far superior to traditional banks. Like, that's the one area. Like, credit unions are like, you get best of everything with her. How much do you know?
Interest rates and like the overdraft fees aren't like even on the same territory.
I mean,
right? They don't just.
I invest my money personally. I don't put it in a bank. I think that's a very low risk but very low reward option.
Okay, I mean, but like for your banking. For banking, just generally speaking, you could still use a credit union, right? Like get the credit card, whatever else.
Yeah, you have a credit card, right? You need to use
I don't use a credit card.
Okay, you do you, King.
Yeah, I feel like we've gone down a very different rabbit hole to what we were talking about. With,
Can
like,
I? So
No,
you
hold on,
said that you're.
wait. So I felt like, Richard, you started off by pointing out like a really big problem with cooperatives, and so it's mostly us being like on the back foot right from the get go,
No.
and it's like what?
I
I
have
mean, I don't agree with the
I don't
problem.
agree
Like
with
we're
that
talking
framing.
Well,
Like,
I
the
mean,
liquidity
it is one of the
is-
biggest questions for what how co-ops should function.
The biggest
and
one is investment. This is a rare one.
and that was part of it. Like the first thing he said was like, how do you own a piece of the company?
Just go.
What?
Sorry.
Send
What?
you may be the streamer now. Go ahead. Okay.
Oh no, I was just saying you can finish your statement. I apologize for interrupting you. That's what I was trying to say there.
No worries, no worries. I'm done.
okay. So I'm just gonna charge in then anyway, and I'm just gonna say that like
We need
this
law and order.
argument about whether there's enough liquidity in a cooperative. I guess. Well, okay. I guess we need to do this twofold. Like, I guess, like in the one sense, we need to talk about like practical examples and anecdotal evidence, et cetera, et cetera. And then I just want to like kind of see like kind of like what is Richard's like complaints and questions about how this would work. Like, what are the like mechanically speaking? How is there a guarantee that there would be enough problems with liquidity that the business or cooperative or whatever you want to call it is no longer able to function?
So I'm not of the opinion that we should be like making unions or anything like that illegal, or that we should be stopping them. I think they have a place in the market. They do work in certain industries, and that's been quite well proven. But I think trying to push them into other areas is a futile effort.
Okay,
Can
and your
I-
source of evidence for this is like what? Like, what's
Well,
the problem
so
with?
from what I've seen with unions, is they seem to work in some industries of certain sizes, and they don't work in other industries of certain sizes. I think it was Rose Wrist did a good video explaining all of this.
Okay.
I presume you've seen the same.
So I guess like my
Hold
question then is like, how are you able to make a determination on what works and what doesn't unless you push for and advocate for these things to exist in all the spaces, and then cease to advocate for things that don't work?
I think we've got enough to say that they do work in certain areas, and they seem to already be doing that in certain countries, and that's fine. I don't think that we should be like putting in government policy to incentivize co-ops and things like this. And if they were more profitable, if they were more functional, then over the long run they will outcompete the more corporate structured companies.
Well, I guess I'm like really
So-
confused as to where this notion that governments are in fact promoting cooperatives at all in the first place. And like, second of all, like I'm also seeing situations where the government are promoting governments, plural, are promoting industries and corporations that are incredibly inefficient. I don't understand why like we would want to not give governments a variety of options when they're already investing in things that I would consider extremely inefficient.
Yeah, and I don't
Or
think
bad for
the
the-
government should be playing
bad for the
favourites
environment.
in that sense. They shouldn't be trying to incentivize one type of government, like one type of company.
So, I
structure,
mean, I
apart
guess, like,
from where it
why-
causes major issues, like when you don't have a union.
Well,
that.
like basically what I'm trying to get at here is like, why advocate against cooperatives specifically when you could advocate against like just wasteful spending, generally speaking, right? Like advocating.
I'm not advocating against cooperatives specifically. I think I've given
Well,
a
you're
fairly
advocating
balanced
for
view of
us-
co-ops.
Well, you're advocating for the government not to invest in co-ops.
Yeah,
And you're
I'm-
giving like some
and I-
excuses for why, but like
I
I feel
don't
like
think the
all of these
government should be-
excuses.
I don't think the government should be playing favourites like that. I think they should just allow companies to do what they do.
Okay, well,
that sense.
is there a
Can I,
situation where there's a government that's playing a favorite here? Sorry, I just want to pin this down real quick, and then I can stop. I just want to like really get to the root here because it seems like
So I
you're
I was-
advocating for like fighting fires when there's no fire.
was under the
basically.
impression that by push for co-ops, you meant like through a government lens, not just to set up your own co-op. Is that right, or are you?
I mean, what government lens would? How could we start? How could a government set up co-ops in an industry? I guess would be like the question. Like, what are you
Well,
expecting?
they
There are
could give
ways you could
preferential
do
loans
it.
and things like this. These are suggestions that I've seen other people who advocate for co-ops put forward.
Can
Okay,
I?
so
Maybe you don't. Maybe I'm misunderstanding.
I think there might be a little bit of a. Can I try and jump in here real quick? So
Go
you
for
say that we should advocate for unions. Would that also extend to worker board membership, which is also a very common thing in Europe?
Yeah.
So I think the way that I look at advocacy for unions and worker board membership is one and the same as advocacy for cooperatives. Strengthening the power that workers have in this country, whether through strengthening these existing systems or cooperatives, is pushing for a system where cooperatives could take control. So the advocacy that you're making, we're not against, and we'd completely support you. What I think I would advocate for is maybe you could have some, at least right now, maybe later we'd have even more. But in terms of government investment, I would only want it for research purposes because currently we barely have a lot of data that
Yeah.
give it for research.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair to have like localized small like experiments to see if this kind of thing works on on like different scales.
And that's the only thing that, like, for the most part, trying to get into it, you'll advocate for. Like if you even look at Emilia Romagna, which is the area that incentivizes cooperatives, not worker cooperatives, but all kinds of cooperatives broadly. It's one city in Spain, or one region in Spain that's very specific, and you could even argue they do way too much incentivization there. I would probably agree with you. They do like crazy amounts of incentivization there, but they don't do it specifically for worker cooperatives. Uh, so if you want to like point to that one example and say there's too much investment there, like maybe, but in terms of like advocating for cooperatives, that goes hand in hand with advocating for worker board membership and advocating for unions, because the primary way you get cooperatives is from taking traditional firms and having them converting into businesses, usually through having a strong union in place that has the ability to facilitate that change.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is I think that the worker board membership and the union should be the priority, and that pushing for like worker ownership, which is the difference between like those
worker
two
board membership is worker
co-ops.
ownership.
Worker board membership is not worker ownership. You do not
Not
make
it
profit
is
from the company.
It is
There is a
workers
difference.
gaining ownership over their company, not
So,
full ownership, but
wor-
it is ownership.
Workers owning the company would give them board membership, but giving them board membership would not give them ownership.
So okay,
So it
I'm
goes one
also
way, but not the
including
other.
like employee stock ownership plans in that, I guess.
So
Okay,
There's this-
I don't think that employees
I look at
having
those
stock
hand in hand.
ownership
So that's my
I mean,
mistake.
is
isn't
like-
it about what decisions the company makes anyway, and not like who technically has like a big part of the ownership question in socialism specifically, not communism. Socialism specifically is like who gets to decide what the company does. So like they go hand in hand and could be interchangeable in terms of what we're discussing.
So I think that there should be different players on the board that are advocating for different perspectives, because there are different perspectives on how a company should be run. Like, and some of these perspectives go counter to each other. I mean, this is the whole founding idea of socialism, is that it is in the workers' interest to get paid more, and it's in the owner's interest to pay the workers as little as possible. And I think there does need to be some tension between those two, that you can't just have one running off without the other.
Yeah. I'm looking at
Can you
chat
expand
real
on that
quick.
a little bit as well?
Pardon?
Like, why do you think that would fundamentally be a bad problem to only have? You don't have these tensions running against each other. You just have smooth sailing.
Well, I don't think that workers would be able to self-critically look at their company and make decisions based on that, because they're too busy thinking about their own interests. And I think that they should be thinking about their own interests.
Is that not the same thing as like a corporate structure that's like you're literally describing like board members on like in a corporation, or
Yeah, who are operating in their own interest, and that is in the interest of making the company as profitable as possible. And the interest
making
of the
their stock
workers
options.
is to get paid as much as possible. And I think that if both of these groups have similar amount of negotiating power, i.e. both can walk away and cripple the other quite easily, and then they become reliant on each other, and then there comes to some kind of reasonable negotiation, like we see in Northern Europe, in places like Sweden and Denmark and Norway, where workers get paid a very reasonable wage, like enough that you can work 5 days a week for only 8 hours a day, and you get pretty good benefits, maternity leave, and all this shit, and you can afford cost of living off of a very basic, 40-hour work week. I think this is what we should be aiming for, because I've got a lot more evidence that works than this fairly, experimental data on co-ops.
It's funny, you're advocating for not taking risks. And the same thing that you're advocating that cooperatives would not be able to take risks, you're saying that we shouldn't take any risks.
I'm not saying they wouldn't be able to take risks. I'm saying they wouldn't be able to manage risks. There's a difference. Because sometimes risk is a good thing. Sometimes taking
it just sounds like
is a good
you're
risk.
arbitrarily arguing against the cooperative as a system, and I just I don't really see you making distinctions that prove somehow that cooperatives aren't functional versus against a corporation. Right?
I'm not trying to make the argument that cooperatives aren't functional. I'm saying that they don't get us towards our socialist goal, or whatever you want to call it.
I don't
better than a union would do the job. I think better. It would be easier to advocate for. There's a lot more evidence that makes it obvious.
It's it's a strange distinction that you're making, because you can literally advocate for both simultaneously without actually putting undue pressure
and in fact,
on the system.
Advocating for both makes it easier to advocate for both.
Yeah,
I don't think that's true. I think that people only have a certain amount of attention span. There can only be so many things that people are
advocating, as I mentioned before, advocating for unions is advocating for cooperatives.
Yeah,
I don't think that's true. I think that they are distinct methods of giving power.
I'm trying to figure out how it's possible to do one without the other, and have it be practically be beneficial, right? You can, I see how you can advocate for one without the other. You're literally doing that right now. You're saying, oh, well, this doesn't work as well, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, in both, you're arguing against the corporate overstructure and pushing for rules and law changes that benefit one side and not the other. And a lot of these rule changes are interchangeable. Someone who's enthusiastic about one will be enthusiastic about the other. It's not they're going to be dried up husks after making one vote one way or the other.
They're going to be enthusiastic about one, they're going to be enthusiastic about the other, but I'm saying that they've only really got so much attention span, and that when we're talking about political will, there is only so much to go around, and if we're pushing for things that are easily attacked, easily shown as fairly experimental and not as secure, I think that hurts the cause of workers, rather than pushing for things that we know work, that we've got a lot more evidence of, that give the power more directly to people in their terms of negotiating.
I don't see how, literally, can you give me an example? You're the only person I've ever heard argue against co-ops while embracing unions. That's
very common, unfortunately.
I'm not saying we shouldn't allow co-ops. I'm not saying that co-ops don't ever work. I'm saying that they work in very specific industries, and that for them to, it seems,
so
if
wait,
we
hold
want
on.
to see if they would work on a wider scale.
Can we incentivize co-ops in those industries through government?
I don't think that you need to. I think that if they're
but
more
is it
functional,
okay? Do you think it would be okay by your standards, or at least by what you're saying? Do you think it would be beneficial?
I could see some argument for temporary incentivization within an industry that we know would work, but generally you only know it would work if you've already done it. So the opportunities to incentivize are pretty small.
This is an argument against unionization in the first place, because there weren't unions before, and then you're gonna, now that we know unions work, it's okay to have them. I feel this is the same sort of logic that undermined unions 100 years ago. But before we actually carry on for just a second, because this is about to be a new topic, can I just address some of the things I'm reading in chat? Because there's this huge misunderstanding about how the Soviet system worked pre-Lenin and post-Lenin.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And it's just it's kind of annoying me, because Lenin made everything state-run, right? His objective was to salvage his position in Russia.
Oh shit, chat. He gonna be calling me out.
His, I actually didn't hear what
I've
you were saying.
I've been poisoning the well quite a bit.
Okay. Well, basically all I'm saying is that Lenin's objective wasn't to create he talked about making a communist system in Russia or whatnot, but he wasn't actually doing that. He was actively subverting a bunch of different socialist, there's a lot of spontaneous socialism that was happening in Russia when the government, the czar, kind of collapsed, right? Like the Soviets are a fantastic example. Like these were worker-run councils in varying cities that just kind of like did their own thing and did their best for the people. They're trying to like improve their local populations, and the Bolsheviks like slowly subverted each individual Soviet by putting their encouraging their political officers to like run for office, etc., etc. And then once they got onto these councils, these Soviets, they started pushing for a nationalist agenda and like subverted what they were initially there for, which was to make sure that everyone in Das Village or Das City had what they needed, right? So I think it's like really important to understand that there were like several flavors of left in that era, like between 1918 or 1917 and 1920-ish, like making moves. And just because the Bolsheviks were the ones who were able to win out at the end doesn't mean that their system or approach was more fair. It was just the most effective in terms of winning the various civil wars that existed in Russia at the time. And once they got on this bandwagon, they weren't able to get off the bandwagon.
I mean, that's literally what I said. I word for word, that's what I told them. Totally
beautiful, cool.
And that
well,
and that the USSR was mostly state capitalist.
Cool. All right. So moving on. Sorry, I didn't hear your responses, and like just reading the chat was like just driving me nuts. Honestly.
Oh no, it's cool. I'm talking to them. I'm getting them a little bit more socialism pilled.
So I am curious. It seems that you wouldn't disagree with any of our like immediate practices because, as you kind of said, that you're fine with looking into funding specifically for research purposes, and if you were able to find data from that would demonstrate that more incentivization would be good, you'd be in favor of that as well, right?
Hmm? Well,
so then we're in agreement.
Yeah, largely.
We just have a different belief in what the data will reveal.
Well, yeah. So it might seem a little bit like pointless why we had this conversation, but it did start off with some people were saying like co-ops is the best path towards socialism, and I'm saying that union membership is actually a better path.
I mean, it's just both. I don't know. Like, I don't know why we have to have this.
You can both sides this as much as you like. I think one's better than the other. I think it's pretty clear. And I think I've made my point as to why I think union membership is more of a...
You made a point like, okay, unions have been demonstrated to work historically after, like, people, like, fought for unions, died for unions, and made unions a thing. Absolutely true. Fine. We got, like, actual demonstration. And like with cooperatives, there's like less of the dying and more of just like trying to get in on the industry. But like just because we've got a greater sample size of unions doesn't mean that like cooperatives are inherently worse. We just need to like let co-ops exist and do our best by them. And like frankly speaking, I think we have sufficient evidence on some level to demonstrate that many cooperatives would function better than the corporate structures that exist in a bunch of industries, right?
And especially where they function better, they will outcompete corporate structures, and then they will become a higher portion of the...
It's the same reason why Betamax didn't beat VHS, right?
Sorry, I don't know the example you're talking about.
So there were two different types of video that was competing with each other initially. It was Betamax versus VHS, and Betamax had superior features attached to them. But VHS won out because of like stuff and things. I'm just oversimplifying it like a lot. I don't remember anything specificity, but because basically
they took an early market lead and then they like snowballed basically, so whatever.
And like the point is that it doesn't matter like what is superior as long as you have enough of like a lead that you can just hold on to the market. So like in terms of like say transportation in LA, for example, cars had this early lead because there were businesses that had an interest in LA being more motor driven than public transportation driven, and that never ended because the whole infrastructure of LA was designed around cars rather than like trains and buses, etc., right?
Yeah, and there's certain advantages to standardization and things like this, which I suspect what happened. Because are you saying is VHS like a type of video recording, and then what was the other one?
Betamax.
Is that a different type of video recording?
Yeah, it was like the actual like Betamax was like a different.
They both have tape.
They're both
Magnetic
analog
tape.
recordings, right?
And I'm guessing you wouldn't be able to play back a VHS on a Betamax record on a Betamax.
Oh no,
player.
they're completely. It's like a. They're completely different. Yeah.
Yeah.
In
So
in terms of like volume and shit or whatever the size is.
yeah, so we see these kind of problems with like standardization leading to natural monopolies. So a natural monopoly is one where it would take a large capital investment, but then it's like a low per unit cost. So the large capital investment is that lots of people are having to buy a VHS player, a VHS recorder, and then it's quite a lot of money for them to then switch over to Betamax. So I would describe this as kind of a natural monopoly, and I think the government should be stepping in. Maybe not in that particular example, because that's something that's kind of happening, but to make it harder for natural monopolies to function that way. And if that sometimes means breaking up big companies like Amazon, who I think absolutely should be broken up, then so be it.
Hey,
That's what
I
has to
like
happen.
my Bezos bucks. I need my money.
I mean, as long as we're like stopping natural monopolies and giving like a variety of corporations and cooperatives a chance to compete on equal footing, then I think we would be in good shape, and that's all that I would want in the first place, frankly speaking. Like, I don't really think we need to do anything past that. Not to say that we shouldn't, and I wouldn't try to if I could, but like generally speaking, preventing a something that has a lot of wealth from stifling all newcomers to a market is sufficient. And like, if you're advocating for that, then in a sense you are sort of advocating for the types of rules that people who believe in co-ops would be advocating for, right? Like, you don't have to take the stance where like we're going to not advocate for cooperatives. We were all flowing down the same river, down the same path, and this rule would be beneficial for everyone. So like, why not fight for it, right?
Yeah, I think it's another path that we could explore, but I don't think that it's like the main route towards socialism, nor do I think it necessarily, with the way that a lot of co-ops end up being run, is actually socialistic, because a lot of them end up being run in a way that means...
Well, now we're going to have to
can I ask
on that definition of socialism, I guess.
I'm curious, Richard, are you a socialist or a capitalist?
It depends what definition of
Because
socialism
you keep saying
have.
it's interesting because you keep saying, I don't think co-ops are going to be the path towards socialism, but you're the only person that would advocate for a route towards socialism that would also say the same things you're saying.
When I say socialism, I'm more thinking of socialism like the mixed economy that we see in Northern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not thinking of a socialism where the community actually owns the means and everything of production. So
social democracy.
I think it would be bad for collective ownership of all the businesses. I think that would lead to a lot of problems with corruption and poor allocation of capital and things like this.
So social democracy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
so
it
would depend what type of socialism you're talking about, because it's a very broadly defined thing that a lot of people have different ideas about. So I tend to avoid like saying I am this label.
Sure, I just found that interesting because you keep saying I don't think that's the path towards socialism. And would you mind if I could take a second to try and, I guess, bread pill you on one specific idea I can usually get people that make your same arguments will follow along with?
Yeah, go for it. I mean, I would say I am very sympathetic to the goals of socialism. I do want workers to have better quality of life. I think that a lot of people are living in really bad conditions that actually lead to like serious problems for wider society, where like their children are not getting opportunities to succeed, and we're letting a lot of young people go through life without good opportunities, and that leads to society having to then pay for them to be in prison or pay for their whatever drug addiction and shit like that, when they could have been productive members of society that would have been contributing, and the whole world would have been a better place. So in that sense,
sure.
I am sympathetic to those goals. I just usually disagree on how to get there.
I have to actually dip real quick, so I just wanted to say bye to everyone. It's 6 a.m. where I'm at, and
thanks, Mad Lad.
get to
I
sleep.
appreciate you being on. You're base as fuck.
thanks.
Get you later, man.
See ya.
Yeah,
this was good. I enjoyed this. Take care.
Yeah, cool. But wait, hold on. Oh fuck. Okay. Yeah.
It's gone.
So this is one idea that I have actually gotten a lot of people that prescribe the same beliefs that you do to go along with. It's specific mandate, or at least pushing towards a mandate, of cooperatives specifically in media. And that is because one of the biggest, and while I would still support a lot of the social democratic policies, you would have a government run or a government funded media source. That's something that I would also agree with a lot of people that would also prescribe with you. I think if you could have the rest of them be turned specifically into cooperatives, or at least businesses over a certain size become cooperatives, you solve the issue of foreign investment from business owners, which will have a negative incentive. Specifically, companies that will own like fossil fuel companies, oil companies, or stuff like Amazon buying the Washington Post and being able to specifically spread their propaganda. You prevent that investment, and then you also prevent the issue of manufactured consent through those lines.
Yeah, so you're going to struggle to move me over on this issue because my favorite media outlet is the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, which is a co-op. So my favorite media outlet already is a co-op. So you're going to struggle to move me on that one.
I'm going to struggle to move you on it?
Yeah, because I'm already where you want me to be.
All right. Well, then you would be in favor of a heavy incentivization specifically in media, or a mandate to try and move towards that direction?
That is an interesting idea. I like that. I'll have to think about it some more because there might be some issues, but I'll definitely think about it.
Sen got another one.
I mean, it's a good idea.
That is the best argument I've just to start cracking. And
do you read the ICIJ?
I do not, but it is not out of a fact that I mainly get my news from hearing Twitch streamers.
Have you heard of the Panama Papers?
I have.
Have you heard of the Pandora Papers?
Yes, I have.
Have you heard of like all those other ones? There are a lot.
Maybe. There are a lot
of them.
So
those all came out of the ICIJ. That's the group that are publishing and doing that shit. My wife's just leaving, so I'm going to go say bye to her. I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, of course. Hell yeah.
Bro, you got another one. I love it. It's so good.
The defense.
Cricket. Is Cricket
What's
still
up?
there? Hey,
Yeah, I'm
hi.
still here.
What
Hello.
do you think? I haven't heard you speak ever.
Well, not today. You haven't really, but.
Well, do you remember me?
Yeah. We were on the first like Council of Kings panel together. Yeah.
Wait, I need to see your face. Where's your face? Do you have orange hair? Are you beautiful?
No, I do not
you have a beard?
orange hair.
I'm the one with orange.
No. Dustin is the guy with orange hair.
Wait.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. So, wait. Do you have a Twitch channel? Because I need to shout you out on my like. I still have like 70 viewers right now, so I might as well shout you out.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, it's just my Twitch name is the same as my Discord name, so yeah, sure. I appreciate it. I don't stream super often, but like probably once every couple of weeks I do. So yeah, I appreciate it.
Hey, every follower counts, right?
Sure, yeah.
But no, definitely. Can we at least go over what you think about what's being talked about? Because I think it'd be. Oh, I already follow you, and I have my bell on. I have my bell on for no one but you.
I don't do bell ever.
Right?
Yeah.
I hate bell.
Okay, go ahead. Cricket.
No, I mean I do not know very much about co-ops, so I was like very interested in learning more about that. I mean that was but when I kind of just stumbled into this conversation initially, not realizing that I was gonna like even be going on stream by doing it, but like obviously I knew I was on stream the whole time. I don't really care. Mm-hmm. It's fine, but yeah, I was mostly just interested in listening to all the stuff you're saying. So.
Thanks, Professor Meat. Hi, Professor Meat. You're back in the chat. And I love you.
This is all I ever talk about.
I'm super gay. Sorry, guys. And like literally. So I get to say that. But yeah, no, that's cool. No hey.
You get them one person at a time, right? Yeah. Well.
No, but that's great. Yeah. But I totally missed the argument. I know I've heard it before, but can you go over it again?
Oh, it's that specifically a mandate in media for cooperatives is a lot more advantageous for two reasons.
Yeah.
Number one, it's because specifically media isn't an essential business and you can play around with it. So if it does have negative consequences, it's kind of all right. And then number two, you get around the issue of outsider investment coming from businesses that would like have ulterior motives, such as Amazon investing in the Washington Post or coal companies investing in Fox News.
Would you want that to be mandated for literally all media or only some?
It would be over time, of course, but if my goal were to be reached and all of the economic standards were met, eventually larger businesses would be mandated.
Okay, so you would want to start with only some, see how it works out, and then perhaps move towards all of them, depending on what happens in the intervening time.
Correct.
Do I have that right? Okay.
And then also only businesses over a certain size, because a lot of cooperatives form specifically from conversions from traditional to cooperatives.
Holy fuck! I can't hear either of you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yeah. No, you guys were talking over each other.
Oh, I am different from a lot of socialists that advocate for a mandate because I want it only businesses over a certain size, and that size is negotiable for me because I don't have practical examples yet. Because you get a lot of traditional firms that the only way you get a lot of cooperatives is because in order to get that initial investment, it's really good to be a traditional firm and then turn into a cooperative.
What would happen to the investors?
They would.
Would they get paid
Well,
out?
it depends who the investors are as well.
So
right?
let's say I invest in a company, yeah. Like I put all my life savings into it. I don't work there, but I really like the company. It's like a normal company, like privately owned, and then they reach a certain size, whatever your threshold is. What happens to my stake in the company?
It depends because the reason I think most people wouldn't do that, I suppose, is because I like the cap that I have on the size at the moment is like very small. Like I have it at 5 workers or less. So I think most people, you wouldn't find people investing their entire fortune in a business that size. But if it were to increase, then that would change. Typically, it would turn into some non-controlling share and translate into that.
Okay, which would
Or you could stay at a
slightly.
smaller size and maintain that because you would essentially be owning the company because you have investment. So you can choose to hire more workers and stay at a small size if you want to. But that's only if all of the other prerequisites have been proven.
So it seems. I don't know if there's more people want to say on that, but there is a problem I think with co-ops when it comes to expansion. So let's say like in the example of like we've got a co-op. It's got 10 employees. We're a fast food restaurant and we're operating in one town. Would we ever want to expand to another town? Or what benefits might we get from expanding to another town?
It's as a cooperative or as a traditional firm in
As
the
a co-op.
system.
So we're a co-op. We've got 10 employees. We're a fast food company, and we're thinking we've had a board meeting. We're like, well, do we want to expand to another town? And
well,
do you think
expansion in terms of cooperatives is very different than how you see it in traditional firms. So expansion in cooperatives is not just making the cooperative bigger and then moving over there. It's creating a new cooperative and then forming a partnership between both of them.
And what would that partnership get us?
Higher negotiating power on the market.
Can you explain that?
Sure. So if you want deals with other companies to get products coming in, you can partner up and collectively bargain for your power. That's how we see Mondragon able, even if you have your problems with Mondragon, that's how you see it being able to act on the international level.
Okay.
Like,
interesting.
Mondragon isn't one business. It's 98, I think, businesses that all collectively organize in order to bargain for their power.
And some of these businesses have more power than others, which would mean that if you're in the wrong business, you kind of actually don't have as much control over how your corporate structure is run.
Hypothetically, and I'm not like a huge... The biggest problem that I have with Mondragon rely too much on, what's the word for it? Contractors. So a large amount of Mondragon workers are not actually, own stocks in the company. And because of that, I think it's like a 5-to-1 scale. So I have plenty of problems with Mondragon. I just use it as an example for how they succeed on the larger scale, you know? So I won't defend... I think it's a good example for success, but it's not something that I'm interested in, fully defending. It's, just to represent the principle.
So yeah, I think the effort that it would take to go up and like set another company up and things, if there's no expectation that we're going to make any money back from it, I think the risk and the effort would lead to a lot less expansion of business, and like these businesses, and I think this is what we see with co-ops. They don't tend to grow very quickly.
But isn't that the same sort of risk that you take when you open up your own business? Like, a lot of people put in their life savings into a very small business just to start it up for themselves, and almost all of them fail, and yet you still see people every single day trying to make their own business. You know,
Yeah,
like what's the difference there?
And if they make their own business in the current system, they stand to potentially lose everything. You know, it could fail, or they could gain a lot of money. But if we're thinking about a system where, you know, your business becomes a co-op, you're saying I'm going to put all of my effort and all of my time into this business because I really believe in myself. But if it is successful at all that controlling share is going to be taken away from me, and it's not going to expand
Not
anymore,
necessarily.
and the amount of money that I make is going to be limited. So I think you're disincentivizing people from starting businesses and things like and expanding businesses.
When you say that controlling share is going to go away, I think that comes from a misunderstanding of how it would work
I'm talking
in this
about.
scenario.
Sorry, is it scene or sign? How do I
Sen.
pronounce
Sen,
Sen?
Sen, like
So
the
I'm-
river.
Oh, okay. I'm talking like how Sen said. Once you reach 5 owners, or 5 workers, you lose your controlling shares, and you gain non-controlling shares instead.
Well, that's only as an investor, not as a worker.
So if
As a
if
worker,
I,
you would
if,
maintain them.
if I start my own business and I have 100% of the shares in the company, and then it reaches a certain size where now it has to be a worker co-op. Do I maintain 100% of the shares in the company?
No, but you could maintain 100% of the money. You would just have to have the other workers eventually pay that, and then you would have problems for dealing with that amount of pay.
Sorry, you cut out at the beginning. Could you just say?
Oh, sorry. So the amount that you invest in doesn't necessarily deteriorate. You don't have to give that out. You can if you want to grow as a cooperative. I'll let different cooperative models fight themselves out. But you can also have it where you require workers to invest equally in the company that you make.
Okay, so
And that
that
can
would make
happen
that
over
would make
time.
hiring quite difficult, though, wouldn't it? So I'd be asking workers to forego pay.
It doesn't have to be an initial investment. It can be an investment over time.
Yeah, so they'd have to forego pay over a time to.
Or
Not
or
investment.
or you can have the government help subsidize those investments into these companies, and then we can nationalize everything.
So once a
No.
so what's happening
was not
there,
what I
I
was
think,
looking for.
is
No,
once a
it
company.
was mostly a meme.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so sorry, I've forgotten it. Is it Sen?
Sen.
Sen. I'm gonna keep.
You're European.
I will
kid.
write this
Come
down.
on,
I will write this
you
down.
got to get this
Dude,
down.
what the hell? There's the French River.
Yeah, I'm also dyslexia built, so.
True. Okay. My true
Same.
ableism mark is coming.
Wait, hold on. Wait, does your dyslexia like prevent you from like reading super fast?
It,
Or can you read fast?
dyslexia is a very. I can read faster than some people, but not fast at all, and my information retention rate is very low, and
Same.
That's fine.
my ability to yeah.
That's no problem.
I had a long time with an educational psychologist who explained all of this, and now I'm a teacher, so I need to learn. I had to learn a lot about dyslexia on top of this. So but that's a separate. I won't go down that. So could you just take me through, then, what happens
Sure.
in my example where I start a business, I invest my life savings, I take a big risk on this thing, maybe even take a loan out to do this, and the business starts to go well, and we get some more employees, and we reach this cap, which you're saying is 5, but it doesn't really matter. We reach the cap. What happens to all this risk and investment and things that I've done?
It depends on how you want to proceed. So
what
I'll
are
run
my-
you
what are
through
my
a
options
few.
then? Yeah.
So your options are you're able to give out your investment and just share that equally if that's what you wish. And if you think that's going to be the thing that's going to get you the most success, that's often
Nah, I
the
don't
case
wanna do
how
that.
you.
I
if
don't
you
want to
don't
just give
wanna
away
do
money.
that-
Okay.
You can have workers slowly invest in those shares over time. And giving away money is often a way to actually make money with these. You can usually end up getting more success.
Okay, I don't quite agree with that. So are those the two options? Either I give away my investment, or
There
I
are
allow
you can
workers to slowly invest.
there's obviously you can stay at there's a bunch there's like it's an economic thing. You can stay at the same size if you wish to because you can continue growing through that lens. You can
Well, so if
you
we're
can
limiting
sell
size,
to
we're
an
not
existing
growing, are we?
company. Well, you can still make more money through improvements without having to grow with employees.
Okay, so limit size, but
Sure.
try and make more money off of those employees. Okay.
Hmm.
So
Plenty of ways to do that.
I
There are plenty of
I
businesses that really
wouldn't
succeed with a small amount of workers.
I wouldn't expect many people to want to give away their shares. I
Sure.
maybe there's some altruistic, but the second option of letting workers slowly invest. So we're now saying like I've got to ask my workers to forego pay, or in some because how are they going to get this money? Presumably, if I'm their employer, they're getting it from me. So they're foregoing a certain amount of pay to then get stake ownership in the company. Yeah.
Sure. So it depends. They don't have to. They're gonna forgo obviously a portion of their pay, right? Doesn't mean all of their pay. You know.
Yeah.
There's also the issue of loans that you can do if that's what you wish. There's the way you can, like the specific model that I advocate for, is that you would remove, what's the tax called? The progressive income tax on the money that's invested in the cooperative. So then that
So you give me
basically,
tax cuts if I do this.
yeah,
Okay.
you can write it off as a business expense, and then there are a bunch of proposed models. Like one of the big ones is about social wealth funds, which can propose the initial capital for a company. Uh, there's a bunch of different
Okay. So
ways
this
to
this
get
is
to
like another one,
industry.
which is government or non-profit buy me out, basically.
Not a buyout. It's more. I mean, I guess you could phrase it as a buyout. But are you familiar with social wealth funds?
No, what are they?
They are another form of what that are socialism, which is like the mix between a lot of them. It's where you have the government pulls some amount of money through taxes and then invests it directly in businesses and then redistributes the benefits from that investment back to the taxpayers. And it's what Norway has.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I do know about that. Okay, cool.
So
So
that's
either
another
way,
model that I
the
propose.
government or a government-owned entity are in some way subsidizing or paying me for my shares. Is that kind of what's happening here?
As a potential model.
Okay, and that's kind of how your workers would slowly gain investment.
Yeah. Also, due to the increased share from their ability, their increased income that they would have compared to a traditional business.
Okay, so basically, if I can grow my oh, how do we determine the prices of those shares?
That's at the that's a private enterprise, and I can't really like that's how
So
the
what's
market kind of decides how they make that decision.
so
So is the
usually a company
employees.
that
It's
has
whatever the mhm.
well, usually a company that's only the size of 5 workers wouldn't be traded publicly, so you wouldn't have a
Yeah,
private
exactly.
estimate. So would the government come in and evaluate how much they think my business is worth? And
It would be like through what means like what level of investment do you mean? I think it would be on like largely an individual level. You would need to invest like it depends because like my solution to that is that's like a market prone solution, so it's hard to make the economic calculations
so
decide exactly
how would
how
the
to do that.
market? Because there isn't a market for my stock shares yet because I haven't started trading publicly. So who determines what the price of my
Usually
shares
the
are?
initial investment, I suppose.
So the person who started the business.
Yeah, the initial investment.
So I'm just going to say they're worth like $1 million a share, and then the
Did you
government.
invest at $1 million a share?
No, but that's what
You
it's
don't.
grown to be
You're talking.
worth.
Okay, I misunderstood what you were saying. I thought you were asking the amount of how much the initial investment was. Okay. Uh, that I guess here we're coming across an area where I'm actually not too clear on that answer because I'm fairly certain there's a way that cooperatives already handle that, and I'm just not familiar with that specific business practice.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested to find out. I think that you're going to run into problems there where it's difficult to determine the price of the shares, and then the government's
Yeah,
going to
Econo
end
Boy
up.
brought up a similar thing.
Yeah.
The issue with it is it's really hard for me to make that determination at our current level. That
What do you mean by at our current level?
because we don't have a government system in place to propose this, and I'm not an economist. I'm not. So I have done a level of research on existing models and proposed potential models, right?
Hmm.
So
So I
the
think,
one thing that I definitely lack, and I will say this, is experience in forming cooperative, and that's something that has been my next specific research area.
okay. Yeah, I mean, if you ever come up to with a question for
Yeah.
that, I'd love to find out. You can just DM me or something. But yeah,
Sure.
I think that's kind of an issue.
That purely comes down to, because I know that cooperative solving this problem. That just comes down to a.
Hey, you actually cut out again. Can
Oh,
you repeat
can
that?
you hear me? Yeah, that just purely comes down to, I know that there's an existing way to solve that problem because cooperatives already do this today. It's just a matter of me, because there's this whole guide online, how to start a cooperative, and I'm going to go through it and all that stuff. It's the next section of my research document.
I think there's quite a big difference between converting a traditionally owned firm into a cooperative model, because there is that question of where does the buyout happen, or does it happen, or do we just say fuck the initial investors?
Well, I'm also like, if it comes down to it, it's fine with saying fuck the
Well,
initial
what if the
investors.
what if the
Okay.
initial
As long as
investors
they
have
get their
already
money.
gotten what if they've already gotten their money back in like 100-fold and they're no longer willing to like run the business? What if they can? Did you guys already talk about like workers buying back businesses that are like being sold or whatever?
I mean,
Like,
if they're willingly sharing, if they're willingly selling their shares, then I don't see that as being any different to what we have right now. You can sell your shares.
Well, what Yahweh is proposing is preferential treatment to. So there's a policy where a second, like
So yeah, we
once a
haven't talked
business
about
is,
that. That's good.
so once a business is going, well, once a traditional business is going out of business in our current model, it's a proposed policy to give the workers the immediate ability to rebuy with collective power.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
think that's
not,
pretty cool.
that's not even really something that most people are against. It's just giving them immediate access. It's not denying it to
Yeah, so
anyone else.
you're giving them, I think it's called like an offer of first refusal. So basically,
Yeah, the right of first refusal.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think giving workers offer of first refusal, and on any new shares that are created, they should have the option of buying those as well at whatever the market price is. But the important thing is there is still a market to buy and sell these shares, because then you can determine the price.
Wait, what?
He
Can you
agrees.
say that
with,
one more time?
he agrees with us.
Wait. You were talking to me? I'm sorry. I was looking at chat. Can you say that one more time? Just like the very last part. Unless I have
So I was
ADHD
saying-
as well,
yeah,
and I'm
that's fine.
sort of slightly dyslexic. So
So I was saying,
just like you, I have a problem like retaining things,
Yeah.
especially in the immediate.
yeah, that's fine. I think I'll try and remember what I said. So I think it's like actually a good thing for workers to have the offer of first refusal, as in like whenever new shares are created, they should have the option of buying those shares at market price. But determining that market price requires that there is still a market for shares to be bought and sold, i.e. is still like capitalistic in nature.
Okay, but you're also saying that so you're under the presumption that this may be like a private company, right? And there's no shares whatsoever out in the public. There's only the owner shares.
If we're talking about creating more shares, we're talking about a company that is publicly traded.
Were you talking about the right of
not
first
necessarily, because like sole proprietorships can have shares,
Okay.
but
yeah.
but the owner owns all of those shares basically.
Yeah, but then the owner can determine the price of those shares. So I guess the owner could try and sell initially
Sort
to
of,
the workers,
right?
and tell the workers what he thinks the price is. But I think that we should be selling these publicly so that we can figure out the price before we start getting workers in on investing.
Yeah, I guess I could see that there would be a problem, like if an owner says all of the shares are worth $1 million because he hates his workers, right? And then afterwards, when the workers refuse, he'd be like, "Oh, they're only worth 10 cents a share, so give me whatever you got, whatever that is."
I suppose
Is that
you
what
could
you
like
mean?
auction them or something.
So yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Is you want to be able to determine the
Creating a
market
model with
price.
that. Yeah, there's a way that they already do it, and I've touched upon this a little bit. It's just a matter of my lack of research.
Okay.
So, like, I know that there's a model that they already have to determine, and it has. I know the exact document where I know this information. I just haven't. And you can strike that up to my laziness. I think Mondragon actually talks about this a little bit. if I remember correctly.
Mondragon.
They have
Sounds
like
like
a
a-
cool paper on it, I think,
What,
So
like
what-
their own research?
on determining the price of shares. I
Okay.
forget what it is.
So
I see.
this is
Go
always
ahead.
a good laugh to me. I enjoy listening how dystopian and fucked America is. What are the laws around union membership in your country?
What laws?
Exactly. What protections
Holy
are there for
shit,
me if
dude.
I want to start a union?
No, but it's
There's a
isn't it-
few.
it's in the Constitution that you're allowed to
Freedom of association.
Thank you.
I think what you're referring to.
yeah, that or like gathering and
But I've been seeing that companies
protest and
can
shit.
fire you if they hear you talking about your wages or if they hear you doing any of this shit. Like,
so that kind
Did
of
you-
stuff is usually illegal in almost every state. Like if you say, "Hey, I'm getting paid $18 an hour. Are you only getting paid 16? You should at least ask for 19, so maybe we can get paid the same amount." Like if somebody hears you say that and then they're like, "Dude, you can't do that. I'm going to fire you now." Like if they're dumb enough to say that they fired you for that exact reason, then that's illegal.
Oh,
But
okay.
there's
But they
so
can
many
get
different ways
it quite
around that.
easily.
Right, exactly. Like, oh, you farted on the on the work line over there, and I don't like that, so get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. So
Do you know
here
the,
you'd have to prove that you have a reason for firing that isn't to do with that. So it's actually a little bit harder to fire people here. But I
Did
think
you
that pay
see
off as well.
the new communication app released by Amazon?
Oh yeah, the dystopian, literally
yeah.
1984
Yeah,
bullshit
I
where you
did-
can't say union, you can't use worker. I don't even know
that's-
what other
that's so
words were
dumb.
there.
That's
Oh.
Amazon is so fucked and on so many levels. Like they are a monopoly. It's just if you have these weird old laws of what a monopoly is that they can get around it. But at the end of the day, they have
Also, the government likes
crazy amount of
Amazon.
control. Yeah, and they do it through things like they'll
The banned words, yes, as IKEA security says in chat. Yes, they're
They'll-
the banned ones.
they'll
You can't say
classify them-
slavery. What?
Can
Yeah, you
not-
can't say slavery.
What? Holy shit!
But they
Wait, is this like a thing, like for real, or do they
Correct.
just kind of like, oh, it was like a memo? Out
No,
to,
it's a
like-
real thing. No, you can say them on premises. They'll probably fire you through some mechanism, but you can say it on premises, but it's a banned word on the, which is protected under American free speech.
Yeah, I guess.
But I think the bigger issues of things like Amazon owning the marketplace and then selling its own product on the marketplace, and the amount of shares, the amount of control that it has over a bunch of different markets. But because its lawyers are really good, they can classify it as a bunch of different industries and get around all the anti-monopoly
Yeah.
laws. So
And they can get around taxes by just buying more shit.
oh yeah, fucking. Why are companies these massive companies able to get around paying taxes? It's just beyond me how ridiculous that
Okay,
is.
so I'll tell you one thing. I used to work for a big. Well, have you ever heard of like the big four accounting firms? Like
No.
there's four accounting firms
Is that like
that in the
Deloitte
wo-
and
Deloitte, PwC. The fuck were the other two?
yeah,
I can't think of it right
I've
now.
heard
It's
of them
6
before.
o'clock. Yeah, there's two more. I'll think of them later. But I worked for one of those two. And as and I tell the story every once in a while. So I did an internship. I couldn't remember that word, internship. And so I was able to see these companies, the way that they're structured and where the money eventually goes. Like almost all of them are sending out their money to the Cayman Islands because they're supposedly, based in the Cayman Islands and bullshit. And
Yeah,
if I saw that as just an intern, you can basically assume that it's ubiquitous across any company that's above a certain amount and has a decent enough accountant to do the work for them.
Yeah, this is where I think companies like the ICIJ are doing like God's work, where they're going in and they're finding out about these companies and they're publishing just everything, like the Pandora Papers and things like this, where they just publish all the information about these companies. And I think a lot of countries are getting on with how to deal with this, and I know the EU has made some quite big strides, and even America recently tried to change a law. I doubt it got passed, but there was an introduction of a law that would criminalize accountants that basically know about what's going on but turn a blind eye to it. So it would force them to basically be professionally curious about where this money's going, so that they can stop this kind of stuff going on. I think there are definitely ways to fix it along those lines of making more people more accountable when this does happen.
Well, one of the ways that in the U.S. that they wanted to do this was to tax any sort of income, no matter where it's going or where it's being made. If you have a piece of your company in the U.S., it's just a across the board like 20%, as opposed to what is it now, 16% or some shit for corporate taxes. So that would prevent any sort of company getting around these tax laws by sending all their money over to like the Cayman Islands, for example. Because like even if it lands in the Cayman Islands, supposedly, it'll still be taxed as though they are literally based in the U.S. So like it would as if they didn't do that. So that's one way around it. There's also another way around it, which would be to like actually give the IRS more money to hire more good accountants who can actually do the research, or to actually go after these people with pretty good lawyers, right? Because audits take a fuck ton of time and a fuck ton of money to go through. And if you can audit all of these big companies the private ones at least, because like all of the public ones, they have to be publicly audited. So yeah, like if we can go after these private companies that do all this stuff all the time, then it might actually help people.
I think we should be making these companies pay for their own audits, so as in like they have to pay an extra tax when.
But they do.
What do you mean?
The public companies have to pay for their own audits.
Yeah, I'm talking about like these private companies.
Oh, gotcha.
They should have to pay for their own audits. As in, like, if you're a massive company, you should be paying a lot of money so that your company can be audited every few years. And it should reach the point where, like, that company's lawyers are getting paid about as well as the people who are going through and auditing them. Because I think if these companies have lawyers and accountants who are getting paid billion, like 1,000 times more than the public auditors. The public auditors are not going to be able to, keep track of all the sneaky little things that those accountants and lawyers are doing.
Oh, you're talking about like the IRS public auditors? Because with those big four companies, they are the ones that are doing almost all of the auditing for the public companies. And if a private company wants to be audited, they can do that as well.
Yeah, no, I don't think there should be a private company that's doing the auditing. It definitely needs to be a government that's doing the auditing, and they should be funded on a similar level to these private companies.
Before you go, Sen,
I'm not leaving, but yeah.
No, I know. Before you go and talk.
Okay.
I guess they are private companies. I was gonna say that they're partnerships, but like they're private partnerships. Like it was a bit of a difference, but not functional. Go ahead, Sen. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to derail the conversation a little bit because I did find the source I was looking at to answer your question earlier, and I can send it to you. If you'd like.
Hell yeah.
Which question was?
So when we were talking about cooperatives, it's a document specifically on how to determine the initial fee in order to join a cooperative. It's not exactly the conversion rate, but it's how they decide the amount that a new worker coming into a cooperative, which I think would be somewhat equivalent. Or do you disagree?
That's
with
not
that?
quite what I was thinking about.
I know
I was thinking about.
It's hard for me to find exactly what you're saying.
Well, I don't think there is an answer. I think you're either going to have the government come in and buy me out, in which case. It's the government's just going to have to make an estimate on how much they think the company is worth, which I don't really trust governments to accurately assess how much companies are worth. And then, or you're just going to have to ask me to give it away, in which case people aren't going to start investing.
Well, no, I think that's because thinking about that question you brought up a little bit more, what is the benefit of having a really high initial buy-in price? Because you have to remember that's since the workers have all of the negotiating power in the scenario.
Well,
Wouldn't you just?
no, we're not there yet. We're not at the point where they get the negotiating power. We're in the transitionary period between it being a
Well, no,
privately
but
owned
in
company.
society generally, the only case where this would be an issue is where you have a dominant amount of worker cooperatives, right? That's the only issue where this is the only time where that would
No,
actually become an issue.
this issue comes up straight as soon as I try and start a new business that crosses that threshold.
Oh, then we're covering it now. Then, if that's
How?
your issue, are you telling so businesses aren't able to convert today?
They are.
How do
but
you
it's
think
done,
businesses are able
it's
to do
done
that
at
conversion?
the will of the owners. They choose to sell their shares, but you're talking about a situation where I am forced to once I reach a certain size.
Exactly, but
So
you have to remember that when you're forming, like the workers do have the negotiating power of whether they accept the agreement or not. You can negotiate within the work with the owner.
But if I'm in a
at this
situation where
time.
I need them to agree because I've reached this threshold, so I have to sell to them, why could they not then say, okay, each share is worth 0.001 cent?
I think that
I
well,
have
then
to-
you just fire them. It's not like a matter of you just don't reach this bigger size. You keep figuring it out until you find a man. That's how that. I imagine that's how unions work, isn't it? You come to a conclusion about how the system would work, which is fair for everyone, and you move forward.
So you're giving them equal negotiating power to me, and there's
Well,
no,
it's not even
there's no attempt to
because
try and work out the price of the shares. It's more just whatever, whoever can last longer, who can.
well, what do you mean by whoever can last
Well,
longer?
so what's going to happen to me if we don't come to some agreement? Does the company have to stop running, or can I
No, the
just keep?
company just doesn't grow to that size.
So I'm not allowed to hire my sixth employee until I've.
Until you negotiate with your employees a deal that works well for them.
Okay. Yeah. So it's basically who can. Because presumably I've taken out a massive investment in this company. I've probably taken a loan out to get this investment to start my business, and now you're saying like I need these rate of returns to happen. I need to become profitable within a few years, otherwise my, all of my savings will be lost. I won't be able to pay back the loans.
Well, hopefully by the time you would do a switch, it's not because you have to remember it's not an immediate switch. You have the loan, you can be established for a few years and then make the switch.
So usually a business would be expected to become profitable within a couple of years, and
Sure.
you're getting these investments or like loans and things because you want to like rapidly upscale your business. But if we're saying to rapidly upscale, I already have to have sold a decent amount of my company, as in like have to have negotiated with workers and we have to be owning separate shares, then I basically can't get that loan until I've done that. And
What do
I
you mean
can't-
get that loan specifically? Like
Well,
from
so
where?
let's say I want to start a business, and this business model is going to have to need like 10 employees to become
Okay.
profitable. I've got my business plan out, I've gone to the bank, I've got my loan. But now you're saying like, okay, before I can actually grow to that size, which I got the loan for, I have to have hired 5 workers, negotiated with those 5 workers as to how much of the investment they're going to have to pay me back for, and then the government comes in and pays me that amount of money, or they pay me that amount of money.
Well, I'm not even talking about the government paying that degree. I haven't
Well,
given to that conclusion.
okay, that was one of there were like 4 different ways we could have done it, but
Sure.
which one do you want to talk about?
Well, we're talking about the one where we're talking. So, I thought we were specifically talking about the model where not the model, the how we decide how you set that initial, how much you need to invest in order to be a part of the company as an owner, right? I thought that's what we were talking about.
No, so we're talking about from like let's say I'm the business owner perspective, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to my ownership of the company once I reach this threshold? Can you,
Yeah.
Can you run me through how you'd imagine that would work? Like I own all of the company. I've taken out this big risk. I've taken out a loan. What's
Well,
gonna happen?
there's the other thing is you might not. Hello.
Hey, Figgle.
Hi. So what I was trying to lean towards is, if you would probably want to be, if you want to do like a rapidly upscale your business, that degree, you might be able, like you're able to move me on the point that it should be higher than 5 workers, right? 5 workers is more of just a
Okay.
system as a number holder, you know. It's a
Yeah.
nice
So
thing to
should
throw
we put it
out.
up to 100?
So what it would depend on, it could potentially be 100 if that's what's necessary. It just depends on how the mark
Okay, so
where you can place it in order to work. And I don't have any practical examples of determining
well,
that
should,
number.
should we just go with 100 for the sake of argument, and we can change it again later?
That would normally be a little bit higher than I would expect, but
What do you want, 20 or?
sure. Let's go with 20 for sake of argument.
Yeah. So take me through what would happen. I've invested in this company. Like I've invested my own business. I've hired some workers. We're now reaching the point where we're going to cross this 20 threshold. What happens to my shares? What happens to my ownership of the company?
So you can maintain the initial investment. You can set it at the initial investment, but then you might not have workers that pay. So like the exact thing that I have here is there are benefits to setting a high cost and a low cost, and you can let the company determine that. Either way, if it's at a low cost, you're gonna be able to rapidly expand and you might be able to make more profits. So at a high cost, you might grow a little bit slower, but you know that the people that are coming with you might stick with you longer and they're gonna be more committed coworkers.
No, so we're not
You can
necessarily
do
talking.
either.
I'm not talking about new people who come into the company. I'm talking
Sure.
we've hit this threshold. What happens to my ownership of my company?
Am I not answering the question properly? It's what are we not talking about how you set the price of investment for a new share? Is that not what we're talking about?
No, for the transfer of the ownership of the company. Like, am I going to get paid out by someone? And how
Well,
much?
you can
how much money am I
maintain
getting?
that and also require them to buy in more. You can require a buy-in. That doesn't even necessarily have to go away.
So I've hired a bunch of employees under a traditional model, and now I'm saying to them, you have to pay me. I've set it as $8,000 each to buy in, so that we've got equal shares in this company.
Mm-hmm.
What if they don't want to pay?
Probably not going to have a workers that might be a little bit high.
Well,
You might not
what
have
if
a ton of
what if they
workers that
don't want
accept
to
that.
or can't pay that? Whatever we set it as.
Then you don't move on.
So I think this is going to cause massive problems for companies that want to like grow, because there will always be employees that don't want to invest in the company because they need the money now. They don't have a lot of savings. I mean, that's why they're workers.
Well, it would be setting a deal of which like you would pay it off over time, right? You'll have some, so like I've talked a friend of mine would say that you just have the government match every investment that the worker would make into the company.
So yeah, the government's taking half and they're taking half. Like
Yeah,
I still
there's some
think you
people
run
that
into
say
the problems
that-
of both of those sides. But what would you do? I haven't heard a solution to this that I think
I
is
feel
terrible.
like I propose. I mean, the thing is that you let the owner, and you have to set a working price for both of them. It's a negotiation. And if you think that's gonna like, I don't see that. I guess potentially it could cause a major issue. But
Yeah, so
if you
it's-
don't think that workers want to improve their standing, and aren't gonna be, if you think that they're gonna be too demanding, I think that's a little bit weird to think of workers. I guess.
Well, no, I think that workers don't really want to own business, and it's easier than ever to own a business. You can set up a Vanguard investment, and you can start investing today. And you can start with as little as 50 quid. But I don't see a lot of people doing this. I don't think
I'm
people
sorry,
want
I
to
use
own.
American money.
I
Well,
think
yeah, in the United States, you can spend even less than $50 or 50 quid, as he was saying.
Yeah, and
It's
you can
very
start
easy
investing.
to invest.
But a lot of
in the
people don't want to do
Americas.
this because they want the money now. Most people are thinking about this week or this month, and in fact, some people are living even behind that. They're a whole paycheck behind. So why are these people going to suddenly start wanting to invest in the companies that they work in?
Well, I mean, like
I think
if it's going to be a co-op, right? Like, aren't they getting paid more, right? Like, up front? Aren't they already getting paid more? Or is this is it already it was a
It
traditional?
would be a
we're trying
traditional
to-
firm turning into a cooperative.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Then why not?
I think the weird thing is it seems like you're making a bunch of assumptions here that do not follow. So in this narrative, it would be already proven that cooperatives would be functioning, and it seems like you're under the belief that just because workers do not want to invest in any capacity,
So
what you just stated there would mean that we wouldn't even get to the place that we're talking about. We're talking like theoretically much farther off.
no, I'm saying that whether it's the workers or the government who foot the bill and buy me out of my stock of the company, either way, I think there are big issues with that. And if they don't buy me out, then I'm still a controlling share. And if you say that my controlling share just gets automatically taken away from me and I get no choice, then I wouldn't have invested in the business in the first place. So I think no matter what your choice is, whatever method you go for transferring ownership of the company to the initial investor, the owner and the person who set up the company, transferring that ownership to a co-op style, it's in this transitionary period that you have a massive problem, because where's the capital coming from? It's my capital, I paid for it, I invested, I took the risk, I took the loan out to get this done, and now either I get bought out at a price that I don't get to really choose because I have to sell, which isn't a position that you can really negotiate from when you have to sell.
So, why do cooperatives exist already? Please
Because
tell me
people
this.
either started the business off as a co-op or
Very rare,
voluntarily
incredibly rare.
transitioned. But there's a big difference between me voluntarily transitioning versus me having to transition. Let's say that I'm trying to sell you a bottle of water and you don't really need this bottle of water. We can negotiate on equal footing. Now imagine a different situation where I'm trying to sell you a bottle of water, but you're going to die if you don't get it. Now that's not a fair negotiation. You have to buy this bottle of water so I can charge whatever price I want for it.
But you're not. This is disanalogous.
So if I have to sell my shares to grow my company
You don't
anymore,
have to sell your shares.
But-
Like you're saying that growth is inherently necessary in this situation.
yeah, generally to make money back on your investments, the company needs to grow.
You can reach an attainable size as a business. You were just talking about how easy it is to. You can reach a semi-profitable state with, like, we said it at 20 workers. You can easily make a profit with 20 workers.
In some industries. But I think generally economies of scale lend to the advantage of being larger. And in some
Of course,
industries,
and that's
you
why
need to
then
have
you
more
would
than 20
have
workers.
conversions into larger cooperatives. I feel like you're holding a lot of. You're simultaneously thinking, oh, it's such a massive scale to create such a large business, and then you were also saying, well, it's the easiest time to form
Sorry, you
a
can't.
opinions.
You
Oh,
can't.
did I cut out?
You did, yeah.
Oh, what's happening? My mic. What's happening?
Bro, you just need to get a new microphone. That's all.
This is
What-
like.
Can I send
This
you
is
one?
a Yeti. It should. I know they're not great, but they should be decent.
Yeah, maybe it's your shit computer.
My computer's fine. You
Become
just
a better
have-
capitalist, and you could buy a better computer, buddy.
Pay me. You're welcome to make me a better capitalist.
I will happily pay you.
Okay, so
Give me
you have-
value
you have
and
to
I
set
will
up my-
pay you.
What?
Set up my Twitch channel, and I'll pay you.
let's
Do it for me.
let's say we're in a situation where, like, I'm choosing whether I want to start a business. I think we've made it a lot harder to start a business if I'm saying that my business is capped to a certain size until I sell my shares. I think that's going to make new businesses much harder, and I think that new businesses are essential to a healthy economy.
Yeah, I think you're massively overestimating the cost here. And you can, if it is the cost, you can create a system to go around. Like, the issue is we've moved to the point, like, where we're already assuming that everything has succeeded up until this point. You have massive success in cooperatives in the industries that we've proven them. And you've had this, like, overwhelming success, which is what I would need to see before we even get to the point that we're talking about. So I don't feel like
Okay.
I feel like you're trying to capitalize on what I would say if we could demonstrate that at an economy of scale, cooperatives would be a good prescription. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what you're kind of saying is that at that point, co-ops would be so profitable that people would be wanting to turn their businesses into co-ops anyway, because that's what would get them the most money.
Well, that would be the evidence I would want to see. You know.
Yeah, so at that point, the government doesn't really need to do anything because people are already. So we're just kind of sitting back and hoping that people start turning their business into co-ops.
Well, you would have an incentive. Like, you would need to. You need to prove that first. You know.
Yeah,
Like, I want the government to step in and make sure that we can prove that.
and
would be
if
achievable.
it isn't working, like if people aren't turning their business into co-ops for like however many years we've had co-ops around, do we just at that point say, well, actually, maybe co-ops aren't the things we should be pushing for, and there are
Yeah,
other
if
things
cooperatives don't work, I'm not going to keep backing a dead horse.
Yeah, I mean, cooperatives have been around for a long time, and they seem to have certain industries which they work in and certain sizes they work well at. But they seem to have massive limitations when it comes to like expansion and other industries.
Yeah, expansion. That's why I think that we should create a system in that where we can details those issues of expansion, Do you know why cooperatives typically have that issue in our current system?
Because if I want to expand my business, I'm taking out a risk. I want to like invest a certain amount, whether it's a loan or selling more shares.
Mhm.
And if that risk of expansion means that I'm not actually going to be making any more money because now I'm sharing between, might be making twice as much money in the business, but we're sharing that money between twice as many people. I'm not actually making any more money at the end of the day, so I've taken this massive risk for no personal benefit.
I'm asking. I don't think that answered my question. I'm not
I
sure.
think that's what stops co-ops from expanding. Or at least
So in our
that's what I
current
think
model,
stops them.
it's that. Sorry, could you say that one more time? Maybe I just wasn't listening well enough.
So if I'm owning a co-op, or like
Mhm.
I'm a bunch of workers making decisions about my co-op, if I
Mhm.
expand, like let's say we open up another, we'll say we're a fast food restaurant, we want to open another branch in another town, we might end up making twice as much money because we've got two businesses that are presumably performing just as well as each other. But we've also doubled the amount of shareholders. So now each of us is making twice as much, but also half as much. So we're just back where we started. So we took this massive risk of opening a new chain, a new restaurant, at the possibility of making the same amount of money that we've just made, or it fails and we end up losing everything.
So that fundamentally comes from. Oh, there's a few things. One that's not, at least in the data that I've seen, the reason that actually demonstrates why cooperatives have not been able to compete on the same level. That is not the, at least from the studies that I've seen.
Well, we were talking specifically about expansion, right?
Yeah. So, to that specific point, the wage doesn't necessarily have to go down in that scenario. You have an initial cost, but that would come from expansion of any business, right? You have that. You have to have that initial cost that would take up to do that. So maybe you would have a situation. I'm sure business owners today already do this, where you might have to take a pay cut in order to do this. But typically, when you have this level of investment in a business, it's to see future gains, not immediate gains.
Yeah.
So in this case, you would often have, like, it depends, of course, on like what business you're talking about as well. But you'll see this kind of surge if it's economically profitable. And at the moment, it seems like that level of expansion is not economically profitable because there's already traditional businesses taking up that niche.
Hey, I do have a question. What is there a formula for figuring out when it would be profitable to be able to hire a certain number of workers in a traditionally owned firm?
So I
So
know
I'm
that.
asking the capitalist.
Okay.
So determining that is down to the capital owner. And the reason that this is good is because it's their own skin in the game. If it goes well, then they end up making more money because they now own a bigger business. If it goes badly, they're fucked.
Well,
they lose money. So there's kind of that accountability.
So there really isn't there's no like formula like that economists have come up with for like the microeconomics of a firm.
You might be able to say on average this is probably a good time to expand, but there are a lot of factors that go into it. So we might be able to look at one factor
Just
and
like
say,
I'm just talking about
I predict.
one employee, like for example, like there has to be like a cost benefit analysis or some sort of
I mean,
like some sort
I
of a
would
model
probably-
that there has to be something out there that says that right now is like the perfect time because we're making so much money, and if we add another worker at a certain amount of money or at a certain amount of pay, that worker is going to add more to the owner's profits. There has to be something out there
guess
like that.
But the person who's making that estimate needs to be accountable to whether it's a successful endeavor or an unsuccessful endeavor. And if it's some bureaucrat in the government making that decision, they're not really accountable. But if it's the person who owns the business, they are entirely accountable because it's their business. If it goes under, they lose money. If it does well, they get money. The profit is directly tied to them.
So I feel like because we're talking about mandates on when a traditionally owned firm would become a worker co-op, right? Like after 20 workers, after 50, after 100 or whatever, instead of it being that it could be that plus like the owner can only make from this one business like 10 times their investment, for example. Like,
Oh, that. Yeah, sorry.
does that sound okay? Like, if they were to, as soon as they get to that point where they're at like 20, 50, or 100 workers, when the mandate kicks in, the owner of the business only gets to make so much, like, again, 10, 20 times whatever their investment was, or however many workers there are. That's how many times they can, like, over their initial investment they can make. Like,
So
is that
I think it would be hard to determine, and let's say we do manage to determine it, as in determine when I've made my money back, because generally business owners, when they're starting a new business, they don't tend to sell all of their stocks straight away. They tend to hold on to them. So when I've made that money will determine on when I sell the stocks. So I could just not sell the stocks, and then I don't
think that
actually make the money.
I think that we're fundamentally in two different areas. So let me rephrase. So what do you think would be fair to make for an owner if they're becoming somewhat bigger, or at least they're at the point where they can expand to X amount of workers, right? Like, would it be fair for them to make 10 times their investment? Like, then it can be a worker co-op, or would it be 20 times their investment? Or do you think that it would just be like owners, because they made their initial investment, they did the work up front, that they can just sit back, relax, and make it like an infinite amount of money, or an infinite times their initial investment in time?
Where, assuming I'm not a public, where am I making this money from as the owner? Where do my money?
The business, like that's what we're talking about. We're trying to take a business, right, and a certain number of employees. We don't know that yet because we don't have the research. We just don't have the practical knowledge from these co-ops existing, and the co-ops that do exist that are huge aren't really great examples, So I'm asking you personally, like, what do you think if there was a mandate, and it's gonna happen? What do you think would be like a good number, if we hit that threshold of number of employees that where it has to kick in to becoming a co-op? Like, what is the amount of money that would be good enough for you to be to like compensate this owner? Because it seems like that's your sticking point, right? Like, you want to make sure like the owner doesn't necessarily have control of the company or the means of production. It's just like you're not compensating them enough money to do this fucking thing. And I'm asking you, how much is that going to take?
I don't think there is a morally right or wrong amount of money you could say for them to make.
So that's where your sticking point is. Like you think
can
that like a company. No, let me just go off on my rant because I have said nothing this whole fucking time. So like, you think that it's completely okay for a capital owner or like a capitalist to invest in a company and make an infinite amount of money, and not have to like turn over the means of production to its workers, or to their workers, excuse me, no matter what. And so that's like, to me, that's a problem. Like, because I've worked in companies where I know that I could have done better than the owners. I've worked in companies where like these people were like shitting on me for doing a good job, like, but I wasn't smiling or something. Like I don't know. Have you never worked in like retail or anything? Like,
yeah, I've worked in retail.
So like everyone's worked in retail. Sorry. Yeah, we fundamentally do not see eye to eye when it comes to this problem of like how much money should an owner be able to make. And I don't think that like at a certain point that like the owner doesn't do anywhere near as much work as their workers, nor do they put as much time as their workers, because obviously the economies of scale, like the work and the time that the workers are putting in, the effort even, or even the love. Like, I fucking love the company that I work for, but I'm never going to be a part owner of it, just because I don't have billions of dollars to buy the company right now.
Not buy shares? Like, you have this option.
So I work for a private company, so that shares are not really a thing for me, unfortunately. But like, whatever level you set it at, the company that I work for would absolutely already have been a co-op like 100 years ago. So
the reason that I don't think there should be a cap on this is not because I want lots of people to be billionaires. I don't want I'm not gunning for people to have lots of money.
But you also don't think that's possible, right? So.
Well, no. The reason I'm doing it is because we're incentivizing new business creation, which I said is essential for a healthy economy. So whatever cap we set this at, the lower we set it, the more we're disincentivizing people from starting new business. The more people they're going to make that cost-benefit analysis in their head and decide, well, the amount of money that I can make off of this risk has been reduced quite significantly. So instead, I'm just not going to take the risk. I'm not going to go out on a limb, and I'm not going to start my own business.
Yeah, but
so it's a payoff. Like, do we want
right.
more businesses?
I would love
started?
to pay off these owners. I just need to know how much, and there's really not a limit for you because you just see it as like this this fundamental failing of our like socialists viewpoint on this specific subject. Like
well, so
you don't.
I think we can get rid of the problem of workers not having enough of a say in their company without having to transfer ownership of the company. We just have worker board representation.
But
and then we don't need to mess around with all this bullshit with the buying the company out, and we don't get the disadvantage of new businesses not starting as easily.
Well, what if? Well, it seems like entrepreneurs love the idea of having control over their workplace, and then expanding, and then getting super rich or whatever. But then, after a while, entrepreneurs, if they stay in the same business, they almost inevitably tend to stagnate unless they are investing in like what is it called? Like getting better? Like what's the word?
Research and development.
For? Yeah, that stuff. But not only that, but like investing in themselves to be like a better owner, a better business, and all that stuff. But like, where the fuck was I going with this? I don't even remember anymore. I'm sorry.
I think that is an interesting.
So if we're in a situation where we've got these shares, can an employee sell their shares and use that money, or do they have to keep the shares?
I don't know, man. Like, what you mean after the point of where the business becomes a co-op?
Yeah. So we're talking about a co-op.
Well,
in this co-op, can I just sell my shares if I want the money? Can I cash out, but still be an employee, or do I have to own these shares to be the employee?
Well, I mean that would be cool, right? Like, wouldn't it be great to?
No, there's issues. There's issues with that because then you can incentivize employees giving up their money, and then you're back in capitalism.
Yeah. So I've got this share in this company that I can't sell.
Well, you can sell by leaving the company.
And okay, I don't want to change my jobs, imagine. And we've introduced all these other problems of having to determine the price of the cost and the payout for the owner, and then that difference in how willing they will be to take risks and start new businesses. So we're getting all of these negative side effects, and really all we wanted was workers to have representation on the board. So why couldn't we just do that? Why couldn't we just?
I think you're assuming it. Okay, I'm starting. It's a little bit weird because I think
not weird. It's just different from how you think and I think.
Well, no, it's because the reason I think it's weird is I already ceded a lot of ground towards this position. And I already said I would not want to reach an economy of this scale with cooperatives if these simple issues, which have not been economically proven under his model through any results, presented themselves and then prove that this model would not work. It's like I'm saying, if we do all this research and we find all this information that you can create an economy of scale, we should do it. And then he's saying, well, what if you find that the economy doesn't get to scale?
Well, so if we're just talking about letting businesses become co-ops if they want to,
that's not what I'm advocating for.
Yeah, we're talking about a situation where we're making businesses become a co-op.
Yeah, and the thing is, I would only want to do that after these problems that you've brought up could be confirmed in data to exist or not.
I don't think that you can research into deciding how much this business that I'm being bought out should be shared. I think the effects of new business owners...
I think you can create a policy at which is economically best and you get the best results.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
and then
I
those
think that
company owners can go and make their own another business and
And
do it
you
again.
think without any data to back it up, because we haven't even been able to find the data, which is all I'm advocating for.
Yeah,
Truly,
more
Well,
research.
so we don't need data into what I'm talking about, because what I'm talking about no, because what I'm talking about
That
is a
was-
simple cost benefit
okay.
analysis. If you say I'm going to make less money off of my risk taking investment, I'm going to want to do it less. That's all I'm saying. Is if you cap the amount of money that I can make from my risk taking investment,
yeah, but then you would
then
need
I'm
to
gonna want.
demonstrably prove that you could not have an economy work with that less.
Well, I'm not
true,
saying
it
the
could be
economy would
less. You might
completely
have.
fail. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you would
Right.
have
Well,
less
then
small
what's your
businesses,
criticism?
and that would be bad.
You're saying that you could still totally have an economy that is more profitable, but
No,
this
it'd be
other
less
issue
profitable.
exist. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying
'Cause
that
that's what you have to
to
do in
answer
order to
this
make this
issue on
argument.
how to sell and transfer ownership from the initial investment to the other person, and whatever
Yeah,
whatever
typically
you choose, there are going to be downsides to that. And I'm saying the
Typically,
ownership
with
isn't
the
actually
initial
necessary or beneficial really to the employee that can't sell their shares. And actually, what would be better if we just had, unions and worker board representation? That would get us all the things that we want without any of these.
Well, that's
weird
not the
side
conclusion
effects.
to your argument. You can't just say one argument and say that would be blah blah blah, because there's a lot of assumptions that you already are making, and the issue is I'm saying there's a lot of assumptions you have to make to hold the position that I'm holding, and then you're saying, well, you can't make those assumptions, and I'm like, I agree.
Yeah, maybe we're just completely misunderstanding each other.
See, I would never
we could
I would
start
never
again, and you could try and
advocate.
run me through how this ownership would transfer.
Well,
Well, it's not a matter of how this ownership
I'm
would transfer.
I'm
I
just
think
thinking
Yahweh
about
brought
how
up.
I think
Mhm.
I'm just thinking about how like capitalism started, right? Like you said that it started with the East India Company.
No,
the East Ind-
a Dutch company's wanting to send ships.
yeah, the East Indian Dutch Company or whatever, right? That's the name of the company back in the day.
They ended up being awarded a monopoly on this because it was so profitable, and So
yeah. But
that-
like
that came later.
before that, you had what the fuck was it? I can't think of it. Where people make shit and then they get paid for making those fucking things. Like, what the fuck was that? Like, there was. I promise. There was a type of capitalism before what we call capitalism today.
You're thinking of mercantilism or what?
Thank you.
Mercantile capitalism.
Yes.
Well, so mercantilism and capitalism differ on basically how they think that governments should be running the economy. So mercantilism, the goal is to export as much as possible, import as little as possible, and hoard as much gold as possible. Whereas capitalism, the goal is to expand
Does
your capital as much
the
as
same
possible,
thing?
which is your ability to produce different things.
Yeah, but that sounds like there is a distinction, but I mean they sound pretty much like dragons gold. You know, they're like they hoard all the gold, right? So that's
So-
what capitalists do, right?
No,
like
that's what
Elon Musk.
No. He doesn't have a bunch of gold sitting around in his bank. He owns
No,
companies
okay,
that are
fuck
worth
you.
a certain
Okay,
amount of
Elon
money.
Musk. Okay, oh my god. So what?
I got lost.
I mean,
What's happening?
he's worth a
We
shit
started
ton of
talking
money,
about
right?
dragons.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that
dragons
money
importing
isn't just
gold.
that money isn't just sitting in a bank somewhere. That's money is a representation of the value of the companies that he owns, the capital that he owns. So we've changed our
I
focus.
don't disagree, but like at the end of the day, like all of that, the value that his companies are worth are affording him a level of power that is disproportional to like any king that has ever existed in history, right? Like Elon Musk, the richest person in the world right now, could literally do anything and get away with it, and for what? Because
No,
you think that like it's okay for someone to have as much profit from a company that they started.
Well, no, I don't think they should be able to have all of the profit. I think they should be taxed. And
I didn't say
tax
that,
should
did
be
I say-
used to-
I said like as much profit as they can see, whatever makes them happy or more powerful.
Well,
But,
they can have that profit, and they're limited in what they can do with the power, because like the difference of what a feudal lord could have done to you versus what a very rich person can do to you is vastly different, isn't it?
Today? Are you seriously like? If Elon Musk really wanted to disappear someone who didn't mean anything to anybody else, he probably could do it.
I don't think that's the same level of power, and that would be
Why do you
illegal.
think Mad
He's
Lad
not
isn't here
allowed
right
to
now?
do that. He could maybe have enough power to be able to get around the law, but at the end of the day, the feudal lord could have done it anyway, and he could have done it in broad daylight. He could just take you, and there'll be nothing that anyone could do about it. This is a massive difference in power, because we've got a separation of power. Back then, the feudal lord had the power over law, had the power over the economy, and had the power over everything that you did in your life. Now we have separations of powers. So you have like the government has control over the laws, the businesses have control over like the economy and things like this, and then the government can regulate that in certain ways, but then they're limited in certain ways.
Which one is like better, do you think?
The separations of power, I believe, is better. Because it doesn't lend itself to despotism as much, and it also prioritizes like expansion over just trying to, hoard as much money as you can.
But do you think that we've gotten to a point where it's kind of like not really super fair for everybody in society? Because I think that Sen and I are mostly trying to like help everybody else.
You also gotta remember he lives in Britbongerland, and
oh my God, Turf Island! I totally fucking forgot. Right. Okay, well,
but like what I'm advocating for is looks a lot more
like
like the Nordic style.
Yeah, that would be great. Start.
I think that's where would you want to go after that? So let's say you're in a government that's in control of Denmark right now. What are you wanting to change?
Well, do they get does everyone get like a stipend just for living there and being a citizen, right?
If you don't have a job or if you're in education, then yes. But if
no, that he's talking about the social wealth fund, which is you get a share, I believe. I don't know how.
So sorry, guys, I keep burping. Well, I don't know. I felt like the conversation was at an impasse anyway, because like we can't answer questions that don't have research or don't have practical haven't been applied practically. So it's like
well, I do think
what if we could like go to the next star system? Yeah, sure, but there's problems in space. Like it's sort of like the same quandary, right? Like we're not really.
I think it's even a little bit less than that.
We're not really.
Is my mic working?
Yes, it is. I'm just talking over you because I want to talk. Okay. It's all right. It's all right. You guys are great, and I'm glad that you guys are at least not patronizing me. What is it? So where you're at least listening to what I'm saying.
So I think I had a misunderstanding of what Richard was saying originally, which led to the back and forth being a little bit weird. Do you mind if I ask one question?
Yeah, I hope that we're like.
Yeah,
we're cool, right? Like we're good, yeah.
Oh, listen,
yeah,
I'm just
okay,
like
cool.
when I talk, I guess I come off a little bit more aggressive than I should be, and I apologize if I've made you feel uncomfortable in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, ditto.
So.
I know I sometimes.
I have been sitting here listening to you guys talk, and I have loved every second of it because all of my like chatters have been like going off into their own world, and I've been ignoring them for like the last 10 minutes. So maybe I should shut up.
I'm sorry for mocking Britbongerland. It's just very easy to mock.
Yeah, well,
it's okay. I'll have a little dig at America from time to time. I'm sure you'll hear it.
You're welcome to. We'll join in on that.
Oh yeah, fuck.
Yeah, and like I agree, like that there are too many fucking turfs in the UK.
Yeah,
and I have my theories.
We'll get rid of your queen eventually. We'll take her out. We'll get rid of your queen.
Wait, do you love her? Tell me you love her.
The queen.
I want to get rid of her.
Do you love the queen?
I mean, I love the amount of tourist money that she brings our country. I love the extortionate contract that we made the king sign under. Basically, we've got an army and we'll kill you if you don't sign this. I quite like these things. I think our current situation with the queen and everything is mostly fine. There are the occasional scandal, but I think she does bring in a lot of tourist money, and the amount of money that we pay for the land that we hold in their name is way less than the amount of money that land is worth nowadays, because of a contract we made them sign at a Sword Point. When I say we, I mean Brit-Bombers from 400 years ago.
Yes, my ancestors.
Yeah, so just as much you as it was me. But
well, I mean, my grandmother was born upon in Avon or Stratford upon Avon or something shit. So like the same town as William Shakespeare, I believe.
Nice. The village that I grew up in, the church there sent people on the Mayflower over to the US, which I think is quite cool. And apparently Barack Obama's ancestors were they went to this church that's in my village, which I think is quite cool.
Have you been there?
Yeah. I walk around my village all the time.
Oh,
It's
that's
a
sick.
really old church. One thing I quite like about Europe is I can walk around and see buildings that are 800 plus years old.
I'm honestly gonna say that that's what I also love about Europe. Like you can go and just be there with history and kind of just absorb it all and it the best thing though is learning about what brought that there. So
Mm. Yeah.
yeah, so I guess my back to my question, like how much do you think an owner should be paid? 10 times, 20 times?
I I think
I'm
that
just
we should.
I'm just
No.
kidding. I'm
So
just kidding.
let me try and give an actual good
Okay.
answer to this.
Yeah, that
So
go
I
ahead.
I think that whatever cap we impose is going to disincentivize starting of new businesses, and the starting of new businesses is something that's very hard to incentivize, whereas the downsides of allowing people to make lots of money is quite easy to deal with through capital gains and corporate tax rates. So I would rather the downside of letting people get very, very wealthy than the downside of stopping new businesses from starting.
Well, do you think like what are the what percentage of businesses would you say have more than like 50 employees?
What percentage?
Yeah, like
Um,
I think that 50 is getting into like the medium to large size company, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think there are that many massive companies because the whole point of a massive company is that you have a lot of employees. But if we were talking about what number of employees are employed in large versus small businesses,
Yeah.
most employees work for big businesses. But that doesn't mean that most businesses are large businesses because obviously a large business has a lot of employees.
But I guess yeah, I don't know, like maybe if we cut it off at like 50 and then at that point they would have to become co-ops and then pay the
Yeah, so
I don't know.
I
I don't
didn't
know.
take an issue with the idea of having a cutoff. My
Shit.
issue
Man.
is where we how we pay off the owner and how much we pay off the owner, and more importantly, how do we determine how much you need to pay off the owner and who pays off the owner? Is it the government? Is it the employees through? Because I don't think we can make the employees buy out the owner, so it would have to be the government in that case. And if the government are buying it out, how does the government determine the price? Do we say you have to become a publicly traded company first, and then whatever stock price it settles at after a year, that's the price that the government will buy you out at? Maybe that is something that
That's a
could
pretty
work.
good idea. I like that. But what are the problems with that though? Like I can't really see well, I guess I could see a bunch of problems with that, but like at the same time
Yeah,
that
that might work. I think that would lead to basically just before the deadline comes up, so 300 days later, people start just keep on buying the stock because they know that they're gonna get money back, and then you incentivize this kind of like bubbling of the business. Do you know what I mean?
All of this stuff seems like it would create a bunch of really weird incentives, like the man. I didn't want to say this earlier because you
No,
guys were in
please.
the middle of having the conversation, but like when you have the idea, when somebody was proposing the idea that the workers have to buy out the controlling shares of the company, it suggests that you might want to temporarily hire workers that will give you an advantageous deal, and just get rid of the workers that would actually be the best employees for your company, just to game the system.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of small businesses hire their family members. So if we're saying that the people in the business get to choose, get to negotiate with me the stock price, and then the government comes in and pays that price, what's to stop me from starting a business with my 5 best friends, and then we hire one more best friend, and we say, okay, now we've got to sell out. We're going to negotiate the price of the stock, $1 million. There we go. We've just
Well,
been.
doesn't that already sort of happen now? Like you start a business like let's say PayPal and it gets pretty big pretty quickly and then you just sell it off to the highest bidder, right? Like these things happen
Yeah,
all
but
the time.
nobody's forced to pay that price. That's the difference.
Which comes back to the whole negotiation over the bottle of water. Because if I know you have to buy the bottle of water, I can set whatever price. But if you don't really need the bottle of water, we can negotiate for it.
Hold on a second. Sen, I don't know where you went, man, but like, you should totally come back.
Oh yeah, can I have a link to your channel? Is it on your Discord thing?
This is not my Discord. This is Meets.
Oh.
Oh shit! Hold on.
You wanna?
We are still in, or is it Meets? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, no,
Link
sorry, I
from my
meant a
channel?
link to your Twitch, so I can.
Yeah.
have
No,
a
no, I totally
pop
get
in.
you. I have been promoting your channels throughout the night. I think. At least I believe so. Okay, VC chat. Boom.
Yeah, I've had people coming in and out. I've never really intended to be a streamer or anything, but I thought it's not that hard.
Well, you are now.
Yeah.
That's
well,
it.
I literally spent 10 seconds. I downloaded OBS. I linked it to my Twitch account. I pressed start streaming. I made it capture my screen. And that's what I've done.
All you have to do is talk,
Yeah.
and people will flood to you.
Unfortunately, I won't be able
I'm
to
being
keep this
very
up.
personal right now because I would listen to you just talk about nothing,
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Cheers.
which is why I only stepped in after becoming like kind of tired, and I had to rev myself up a little bit more. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you guys letting me do that.
Yeah. I don't know. There is that temptation to become a streamer, but at the moment I'm a teacher, so I obviously don't have time most of the time. It's only because we're on half term at the moment. Oh, we're on term holiday that I've got the time to like go and talk to people on Twitch. But this is what I love doing. I love just having chats with people about businesses and economics and policy decisions and things like this.
I'm gonna tell you one thing, man. Like I went into accounting for. Oh, well, there he is again. Hold on
Hello.
just a
Welcome
second.
back.
Hi.
Is there an
Welcome
echo?
back.
No, not that I
Okay,
hear.
I'm on my phone because my internet literally collapsed, which is why I haven't been streaming recently.
I'm sorry to hear that. Wait. Hold on, wait. So, like, what you just said, like, with regard to how businesses work and how to, like, make them better, or at least that's what I heard because that's what resonates with me. That's what I went into accounting for. Like, I love just, like, understanding the different interplays within a company. And I feel like accountants are pretty good at surmising those types of things.
Yeah, they put numbers to this stuff, which I guess is why you were thinking about, like, could we put a number on when it's a good time to get a new employee?
Yeah, you know?
Yeah.
So
Well, no, there has to be something. I have to look this up. I'm gonna shut the fuck up while you guys talking.
okay, Richard, can I ask if I can? Let me see if I fully understand your question. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
So, are you saying that if you put essentially a cap on the amount the initial owner can make in any capacity, or specifically on this capacity, in the way that I'm suggesting, that it will decrease the amount of entrepreneurship in a harmful way?
I don't know if necessarily. I'd have to look up the definition of entrepreneurship. I'm talking about the creation of new businesses.
Yeah, I would. Sure. Then instead of entrepreneurship, I can say the creation of new businesses. So you think that putting any cap on that will necessarily be harmful to the degree that it would affect the economy?
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously any decision you make from that level is going to cause harm, and I think that would cause more harm than the other option, which is to then just tax these big businesses when they make a lot of money.
Well, we're fine with taxing those businesses. We're not against that.
Yeah.
But the problem with that, essentially, is I think we have a disagreement on why, or at least the psychology of why people engage in the economy. I think business owners, when they start a business, are not, they may in their mind seek to become the next Musk or the next Bezos, but the majority of business owners don't engage in the economy to get to that point.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, and I agree. Like, there are a lot of people who don't engage with it, but the less people we have, so there would be some less people who aren't going to, but there would still definitely be some people who are going to still start a new business. I'm saying that, like, it's quite difficult to incentivize people to start new businesses, so that's not something that we should be disincentivizing with policy. We should instead just seek to see if we can get around having to disincentivize it.
Well, the issue is it's not I mean, I guess it depends on how you use disincentivizing it. I would say there might be less of an incentive because you can't become Elon Musk, but it depends if this. The thing that is important is that the investment or the incentive is substantive enough. Correct?
Sorry, can you repeat that question? I didn't.
So, what's most important is whatever degree oh, what's the word? It's not investment. It's the other one. The other I. We were just talking
Incentive?
about it. Incentive. Thank you.
Yeah.
It depends on. So, got it. Incentive. So, what my argument is that you could create an economy that would still have enough of an incentive on making an initial investment that you would still be able to have a very successful economy while preventing people from becoming the massive multi-billionaires.
Yeah, and I think the way to stop people from becoming massive multi-billionaires
No,
is through
I'm not seeking
monopoly
to
law.
stop multi-billionaires. I think your argument is that if you can't become a multi-billionaire, that will disincentivize investment.
Yeah, almost necessarily. If you're limiting the amount of money that I can make from investing, you're making it less profitable, potentially, for me to invest. Because in investing, you are making...
Isn't that a similar argument against income tax?
Yes. I mean, income tax does reduce the incentive to have a larger income.
But there's a lot less risk in terms of like my income. Whereas with investing in a business, we're talking about risk management here. So my chance of making it big being a little bit, well, impossible, making it massive. That's what drives a lot of really, inspirational in terms of like the amount of value that they end up generating through their ideas. Those are the people we really want to capture, and we want to make as much money off of them as possible. Because every generation there are going to be a few people who are just absolutely amazing in terms of their ability to run a business and to innovate and things like that.
I don't think it's amazing. I think it's luck. I think it's largely being able to engage in the correct capacity with the market.
Yeah. And
I would expect the most successful people to have both of those things on their side.
Yeah. You have to be lucky. You have to be.
My point.
But I want to make as much money off of those people as possible.
Any better than any other business owner. They just happen to be in the right place at the right time.
I think there's definitely both. I think you have to start off in a good place, and then you have to be capable. If you're talking about running your own business, and because like through nepotism, just knowing the right people can help you, but that's generally not people who are starting a business. But I think the really...
That's Elon Musk, though.
Well, no, I think Elon Musk is an intelligent person.
He started
who has
off
good ideas.
He was the inheritor of an emerald mine.
Yeah, what I'm saying is you have
That's
to do
what I mean
both.
by starting off with that.
Yeah, you have to start off wealthy, and then you have to be quite smart with your ideas.
Oh, sure. That's not important to the point.
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying might be correct in some abstract way, but I also think it might be reliant on it's the old capitalist narrative where people that propose capitalism say that people that engage with the economy only see themselves as temporary embarrassed billionaires. Have you heard of that argument?
Temporary what?
Temporarily embarrassed billionaires, where everyone that's participating in the economy thinks that they'll eventually become a billionaire. So because of that, that's what incentivizes business owners to start and experiment.
Yeah, I don't think that everyone thinks that, but I think that there are some people who think that, and it's true. They will become quite
This isn't only applicable to billionaires, too. Like, there could just be people with middling ambitions who would be affected in the same way.
Well, the difference is you could create a economy where you can still have those middling ambitions and you can accomplish those through this system. So that's what we're exclusively talking about is those upper echelon people. That's the only disincentivization that we're worried about with specifically market socialism.
Well, depending on where you set the limits, that might be the case, yeah.
Well, I would want to... I'm not against the concept of a millionaire. I think that millionaires are free to exist, even multimillionaires. in a market socialist economy, which being a millionaire isn't even like too big of a deal anymore, at least in the States.
Yeah.
So I think that this disincentivization only really comes from being at that top echelon, the Bezos, the Musks, and that's like what we're strictly really talking about disincentivizing here.
Well, depending on where you set the limits, though, right? Because,
Yeah,
like, if we were to go with your initial proposal that anybody that has more than 5 employees gets limited, right? Then we're
you could still become a
clearly,
millionaire off of that model.
perhaps, yeah. But in any case, like, you're definitely not only affecting Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, but with a policy like that.
Sure, I agree with that, but what I would say is that you could still be even engaging with that one, which is negotiable. The five is once again a placeholder.
Right.
You can engage while being an initial investor slash owner and still reach that millionaire status.
Yeah, sure. And at the extreme other end, you could replace 5 with 50,000, and you know what I mean. And then it just
Yeah, then you
affects
have
only,
capitalism again.
and then you get something like very close to what we have now. Yeah.
Listen, I'm all for turning specifically Amazon into a cooperative. I'll get behind that as well, but
Yeah.
I think you could
Pretty
easily
fucking
build
based.
one where that incentivization, like, it strikes very similar to the temporary embarrassed billionaires argument, which is an argument against taxation.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, you could have a take where you could say like yes, it does reduce the incentive, but it's worth it because we get these other benefits from it. Like it.
I'm all that is essentially my take, and additionally, that the reduced incentivization would be very minor with some societal changes, like getting rid of the idea that you need to become Musk to be successful, which is kind of a toxic thing in business culture.
It is, but no change in policy is gonna is gonna affect that. That's more of like a psychology thing. But yes.
Well, in order to bring about my preferred system, it also comes down to changing the psychology kind of thing. I
Yeah,
mean, you
yeah.
start with the amount that you have come around. Does that kind of strike to what you were trying to say, Richard?
Um, Let me try to rephrase kind of what my goals are with all of this, and we'll see if we can understand. So my ideal system, people's basic needs would be provided for by the government, but the government needs to get their money from somewhere, and I think we can get that money from the very industrious and very capable people in our society by allowing them to get more benefits than other people. So we set up a meritocratic system where they get more money and that kind of thing. But
Well, that's
we
not
take
meritocratic.
we
Sure.
well, so the idea was that
That's just hierarchical, not inherently meritocratic.
yeah.
It's not saying the best or
Well, but what I'm saying is it's not inherently meritocratic, but I'm saying that we should try and make it meritocratic.
okay.
And then the goal would be to extract a percentage of the money from all of these people who are making, quite a lot of money, and use that money to pay for the basic needs of the people who can't provide for themselves.
So do you want to know what my fundamental criticism of that problem is?
Yeah.
So you're giving the people with the most power in society, you're taxing them. So don't they have an incentive to directly work against that the burden being placed on them?
As in, like, they're going to try and implement laws that would stop me from doing what I want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I would also have to include a bunch of laws about transparency with how politics is funded and things like this that America doesn't currently have, but there are countries that do have this.
But even your best European countries are going through this exact same problem, whether it's deregulation, whether it's what's happening to your healthcare system currently. There's plenty of where you'll have upturns and downturns, and that's one of the biggest proposals that this system fixes. If everyone is advocating within the same class, they're advocating for everyone's goals. And you still have issues of other classes, but if we shrink one class from bourgeois and proletariat into the workers, or whatever you want to call them, the bourgeoisariat or whatever, then fundamentally you don't have that division of advocacy.
So there are two kind of issues. There's the economic and there's the power issue. Which would you rather talk about?
Whichever you think is strongest.
So I think the strongest reason for why I'm against like a government being able to have that kind of power where they can just basically run the economy for the benefit of the people.
Well, wait, what do you mean? Sorry, that's not the conclusion I was saying exactly. Could you? I'll let you finish your point. Sorry.
Okay. So the worry would be that then the government has taken away the power of like private people to the point where the government now has all of the control. And if the government does the right thing with that control, hey ho, whoopsie-doo, we've got a great society. Unfortunately, I think someone's going to come along that misuses that power. And because the power has been consolidated and is no longer separated in a capitalist economy where you've got separate economic and political powers, in that situation where it's been consolidated, you are ripe for a fascist-esque person to come in and just take over.
The difference is I'm not advocating for that kind of centralization of power. Am I?
Well, it depends what kind of socialism you're talking about.
I'm specifically advocating for market socialism.
Okay. Yeah, then we'll talk about the economic issue, which I think is that...
Okay. So there is no power issue with that statement earlier then, right?
It would depend how it's set up, because if the people who are regulating these market socialism things, yeah, it depends how they are limited. If you limit them correctly...
Only through democracy.
I mean, doesn't literally every society have that problem, by the way? I don't think either system is escaping the fact that powerful people can come along and abuse their power.
Well, my advocacy is specifically removing those powerful people. So I think mine would actually do better.
But the person who's removing them, the person who's making that decision on who gets removed and stuff...
Who would be the people?
Okay, the people love executions. I think there's a really sad thing about humanity, but people fucking love executions and basically making people suffer.
So you're anti-democracy then?
In certain senses, yeah.
Send, come on.
Yeah, I think there are certain things that we shouldn't be able to vote for, which is taking away all of someone's private property in a directed way. We could do it in a way that we're saying, okay, you have to give a percentage of your profits if you work in this industry. But to say to one person, we're taking all of your shit, I think the government should be able to vote. Shouldn't be able to vote to do that.
I'm not taking everyone's shit.
You're taking certain people's shit. I don't think the government should be able to have that power. And once you give that power
who
to
gave
people,
them that shit in the first place? The system we created.
Mm-hmm.
The power to give and the power to take away. You can let us be controlled by oligarchy, or you can.
Well, so once we start voting on that, I think that people would start voting on it more and more, and we would end up collapsing our whole economy because of it.
So a slippery slope fallacy.
Well, I'm saying the two are quite.
Taxes, which is what you're advocating for.
A slippery slope fallacy is one where you can't demonstrate the connection between this. I would point to the French Revolution, where they started off, just getting rid of the wealthy and the kings and the queens and the nobility who were fucking them over. But then it just kept on going. Once they started having fun executing these people and taking their things, they just kept doing it, and no one could stop them.
So you can't have taxes of any form because you're taking away people's power.
What are you on about? I love taxes.
Did anyone say that?
Because that's what you're directly advocating for, because I'm only advocating for building a system where these people's power is taken away through taxation. I'm not saying we should go chop their heads off.
Those aren't the only two alternatives.
Well, that's the alternative I'm proposing is taxation.
Yeah, but nobody's opposing taxation.
Then he doesn't disagree with my argument.
Okay, so should we talk about the economic thing, the economic issue?
Sure.
So I think that you have to play a delicate balancing game of today's profits versus future profits. And when I'm talking about profits, I mean money that can then be spent by people in keeping themselves alive. So your worker. Capitalism is very much geared towards the future, because capital is your ability to produce things in the future. So capital will always be trying to make a better world, which is why we've seen this massive increase in quality of life over the last few hundred years.
I might disagree with that, but we can talk about that once you finish.
So we could go for a system that's more edged towards providing for everyone's needs. And I think if we go too far in that direction, to the point where it's now becoming quite difficult to run businesses, we wouldn't be able to afford these social programs. So we need to find some delicate balance between the two, where we're investing enough in our future that our economy is growing at a rate that's, going to be able to support our population and our desires, because people are wanting more as society gets better. And people today are being provided for enough that they're not, out in the streets and starving. And this is a delicate balancing game that needs to be played. And I think socialism...
Sure. What do you think... Sorry, what do you think has facilitated the increase in quality of life over the years?
Like technological advances, mostly.
And what causes those technological investments?
People... You need two things. You need money and you need innovation.
Mm-hmm. So I'm proposing... towards that end, a thing that creates most of the new investments that has improved people's lives is... Fuck, what the hell?
What happened?
I had no idea what just happened. What was that?
What am I here?
Yeah, you're here. You like went out and then it sounded like you were in a cave for like 2 seconds and then you said, fuck, what the hell?
I don't know what happened. My internet's acting up.
Well, I thought you said you were on your phone.
I am, and that's what's weird. Whatever. There was a train of thought that I was on, and now I've lost it. Can someone...
improvements in quality of life, technological advancement.
So, like, for example, vaccines have largely been invented by government investment, technological investment. Like, a lot of things are not caused by market innovations. And through that lens, you can use the government to improve quality of life through technology. What the market's good at is making it a product, selling technology. That's what the market's really good at.
Yeah,
and I'm still advocating for a market system.
I'd be interested to find out how your system works. Do you think you could, like...
Well, have I not detailed it? Well, there's, like, a bunch of complications.
Well, so we talked a lot about co-ops, but that was in the hypothetical that in the future we've proven that co-ops are, like, demonstrably better than traditionally owned firms. What is it that you're looking towards, like, right now? What?
Oh, well, we talked about it. I would agree with you in terms of the Nordic model. I would maybe have a stronger social wealth fund and more investment, but that's about it.
I'm not actually sure that all of the Nordic countries have a massive social wealth fund.
I'm talking specifically of Norway.
Yeah, Norway has a really big one that they got because of their oil, North Sea gas and oil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we do it with tech.
which is what I think most companies should be doing with their natural resource funds, like Russia and any country with like decent amount of natural resources should be setting up a sovereign wealth fund. So that they can...
I think every country should try and set up a sovereign wealth fund, if it's economically affordable, of course. But
yeah, but most governments are running at a deficit, aren't they? Unfortunately.
Yeah, we need to fix that problem.
Yeah. But that would mean that we have to either start taxing more, which I think is probably what we need to do, and we would need to cut back on some other programs to spend more on. You got to trim the fat occasionally. You got to find those government programs.
Yes, we have. I would love to trim the military.
Yeah.
So, other than cooperatives, the steps I would take, like I think the Nordic model in a lot of European countries are moving in the right direction. Of course, like I think, like specifically with housing, I think Finland is a really good model to look towards. Specifically with prisons, I also think Finland's a really good model to look towards. And towards moving the United States to those positions for the countries that have already done good things. I think they should be seeking to expand more. They should be doing research and more risky behavior, but not totally investing and seeing where the next step is, because it's hard to determine what the next step is to improve. But I don't think, and a fundamental critique of what you've been saying is I don't think there ever is an end state of a society. I think that we'll always keep progressing, always keep changing, and I don't think just saying, let's go for Norway and stop there is good.
Yeah. So when I'm thinking about long-term progression of a country, I think less about its laws and things. I think more about its institutions. I think like what institutions does that country have that are doing well, and how can we make the ones that exist do better? So like an institution that we have in the UK is our education institution, and I think our education institution is great. I mean, I work for it, so obviously like I'm a little bit biased, but I think the way in which it runs and does research and things like this, like I think it's really well built. But I don't think that it would be very easy to set that up in another country. Like if we were to try and take America's education system and turn it into our education system, it'd be very, very difficult because that institutional guidance
with our
isn't there.
education system, but probably not just copying.
Yeah, but it's not just like, yeah, it's not just a case of copying, because you've also got to set up like the sort of ethos and the culture around education and things like this. Like it can take a lot of time to build these attitudes towards how education is done. And like I don't think we're 100% there in the UK anyway, but we're definitely getting better. Like if I look at how classrooms have changed since I was a student versus now that I'm a teacher, like it's changed massively. It looks very promising.
I'm also I guess I like Finland more than to some degrees. I really like Finland. I sim for Finland's model, but yeah.
Yeah, I've heard some really good things about Finland. I've not looked at them too much because they're just such a small country. Like I find it a little bit difficult to, in terms of their population.
Yeah, but they have really good results. Finland's also a really weird place, but it's cool.
But there are a bunch of microstates in Europe that have really good results, but it generally comes down to some like unique history that they've had, and I think it's better to look at the larger ones for a better idea of like how scalable these things are.
By large, you mean specifically economy and population, right?
Yeah, I'm talking, population kind of thing.
I think you got to look at all the. I mean, it's a congregate, you know. You can't just say like if we based what works based on whatever's the largest, we'd be looking at China.
Actually, I am mistaken. I thought that Finland was smaller than Norway. They're about the same size. Norway's slightly bigger. No. Oh no, Finland is slightly bigger. Yeah.
Destroying expectations.
But yeah, they're both very small countries at less than 6 million, which is not a lot.
There is problems with scale and culture across nations, but I think seeing what works and moving in those directions is very positive.
And I, to be honest, and this is a bit of a radical take, I think if we're seeing that smaller countries are doing better, that we should then be breaking up our big countries into smaller countries. So things like the separation of Scotland and the UK and Wales separating off, and maybe like America splits up into its individual states again.
I am fine with destroying Britain's empire even more. I think that'd be really funny.
I wouldn't be doing it for the shits and giggles. I'd be doing it because
reject modernity.
I think
embrace
that
tradition.
smaller countries do innovate better and they provide better for their local population.
But that's only Western countries, right?
Sorry?
That's only Western countries?
In terms of splitting them up.
You said that smaller countries are able to innovate better.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of these smaller countries seem to be doing quite well. They seem to be more responsive to the needs of their population because there's less people voting, and like they're better able to have discussions about like local issues. Because something I see as a big problem with America is your system is set up for local politics. So really, if you want to have political power, you should start with your local area. But the way that people engage with politics nowadays is on a national or even international level. So people are talking about problems like on a national level, but the solutions in the way that your system is set up should be brought about in the local level. And I think that disconnect is what causes a lot of frustration and disengagement of people when it comes to politics.
There are some benefits to what you're saying, and I have thought this through. Can I ask your general thoughts on the European Union? You are British, so I have no idea.
I think that the European Union was a really good economic policy, like the coal and steel, what turned into some basic regulation of markets and things. I don't like that its motto is the ever closer union, because that very much implies their goal is statehood, and I don't want to have a European state.
Well, why? You're not a part of it.
You're not.
Because of what I said about big countries not being responsive to local like social issues, and how if you've got these massive countries, then that sets up massive companies that then have like disproportionate amount of power and are very disconnected from the people that they employ, and yada yada yada.
How big is Europe?
Pretty. It's if you count the total population of Europe, it's.
Well, I'm not talking about the population. I'm talking about like in general, like because I don't think that like Europe is so big that like problems in one area.
if we're looking
I
at
guess could it
Eastern
be?
Europe versus France versus Spain, like
Oh, I
they're all
guess so.
facing
Yeah, I don't
massive
know.
issues. A bit like how the issues in New York are not the same as the issues in California, and not the same as the issues in Texas. Like,
Well, I think
I've
the United States is like bigger in terms of size, and it's also
Europe is way more heterogeneous, like
yeah. I was
culturally
about to
and
say like
economically.
demographics and socioeconomically. Like I obviously you're gonna have similar issues in the European Union and in England or wherever the fuck you are. Um,
well, I just learned a
like
new word. Heterogeneous means a diverse in character or content. I didn't know that word. Thanks for teaching.
oh,
I've
heterogeneous.
played with that idea that you suggested.
Heterogeneous. Sorry, sorry.
I've played with the idea of breaking up the states. It's actually a kind of a little bit of an anarchist take, and there's a few reasons that I think it could be beneficial, but it's a very complicated process. So one of the reasons that I think it could be beneficial specifically for the United States is currently we have a lot of red states which rely on national government funding, but cost the most, yet protect it the most.
Yeah,
And
let
I
them go.
think you could have a potential where if you break up the United States, they would have a liberalization because having to actually run a government on their own would result in them actually like not being coddled by the United States government in mainly California, Texas,
Mm.
Florida, and New York.
Yeah, and
And I guess
I think an important part of liberalization of an area is that it has to be done voluntarily from within. We see with like regime change wars and things like this that it doesn't work. And I think the civil war that happened in America kind of still has roots today in the sense that the South don't
Oh, of
really
course.
feel like they chose the destiny of their country. That instead
But
it
I
was
also
forced upon them by the North, which is why
I
we've
think
seen
there's
like
also as much
racism
as
stick
there's
around and things.
as much as there's benefits, there's also disadvantages. That comes with anything, of course. But I'm not. The thing is, like, if every state became sovereign, for example, that could run into a lot of territory issues. That would run into a lot of complications, obviously. And then you have governments that you would need to entirely rework economies before you could ever accomplish that.
Yeah, so that there are
And
two aspects of the government that I think should be big. That is economy. So I think that these states should work together to create a common economy, and then defense. So they should have a mutual aid defense pact like we have with NATO, where if one of us gets attacked, we all come to their aid.
well, it reminds me of like almost an ANCOM take. Because ANCOM support really small communities because then you could have a command economy on a very small scale that doesn't run into the economic calculation problem, which is part of the advocacy for that, and it's kind of interesting. That's through the context I've thought about it. But it could potentially be a problem. It's also just I really like the European Union. I don't want it to become a full statehood, but I think having a coalition to collectively make decisions is really positive, especially for the means of free travel.
Yeah,
And
I agree. I think there are some great things that come out of the EU, but their goals, and it's explicitly stated, their goal is to become an ever closer union, i.e., eventually its own political entity. I think that is the issue. And
well, sure. And I think but that's a matter of reform. It's not do away with the system. Make sure that you build a system that works for you, and that's kind of what I guess Brexit tried to do in a weird way.
yeah, I mean, so most British people love the idea of having an economy that is integrated with Europe. Like, this is why when we left, we were all talking about, like, hey, is there a way we can work out a deal where our economies can stay integrated? And, well, why the EU said no to that, we will never know. But they were trying to force other things upon us. Like, they've been asking us for a long time to have the euro as our currency, which would give up like a decent amount of power. They also like put a bunch of restrictions on what kind of things we can trade and who we can trade with, things like this that people aren't too happy about. I mean, like, we've got an issue. This is a really random one, but there's a tax on sanitary products, so like tampons and things, and the UK want to get rid of it. We wanted to get rid of it for a long time, but we literally weren't allowed to because it was EU law and we can't change that. So there were things like this where it's like, why the fuck is someone in Brussels deciding what happens in my country with our like tax laws? It's really dumb, which is I think built a lot of resentment.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but at the same time, I think that's also a matter of reform, right? And it's difficult to
Maybe.
do, and it might have taken Brexit, but I think abandoning the concept of an EU, especially with all the successes that it's had, could be really disastrous.
Yeah, in my way, the EU would stay as it is, and would keep expanding east and south into the Middle East and Eastern Europe, and then we would end up setting up. Because the wonderful thing I think the EU adds is that it sets a sort of path to development for developing countries. So we say, like, you've got to reach this level of free speech and this level of workers' rights and things like this before you can join the EU, which sets up this nice incentive for development. And at the same time, I think it's not so great for the countries that have been in it for a long time and are already more developed, because it kind of limits the amount of development we can do. So I think that we should be setting up like a northwestern European Union that is, because the other European Union could keep moving south and east, and then we set up like an agreement between like Norway and England and Denmark and Germany to have their own like further incentivized program. So you now need to reach an even higher bar of development and workers' rights and free speech before you can join this inner.
I will be right back because my internet's back, so I'm gonna switch back to my computer.
Cool.
All right, let's go.
Richard, would you want Russia to join the EU?
Hello?
If they met all the criteria to join the EU,
We can
as
hear
in,
you.
like about their freedom of speech and things, then yeah, I'd love for Russia to join
Hello?
the EU. Hello.
Yes, son, we can hear you.
Okay. It's an interesting proposal, but I do think that is not the approach I would take. Are you familiar with the IMF Bank? I'm assuming you are.
Yeah.
So it sounds very familiar to the style that the IMF Bank has taken, where in order to accept these loans, you need to go through our conditions, right?
Mhm.
And I think there is an implicit coercion in that model,
Absolutely.
which you would run into.
It's explicit, actually. Like they literally want you to do shit to liberalize their economy and open up,
Well, no, the
markets and shit.
The implicit coercion is that you don't have a choice in the matter. That's what I more mean.
Well,
Not
I mean,
that
you
that
can
you
always
need
not
to
take
do
those
this.
loans,
You cannot
but
take the loan.
Well,
You're not
generally
taking
you're
a
in
loan,
a
but-
worse place if you don't do it, which is what I mean by the.
Yeah.
So I think
liberal
that-
democracy, you have to do it. I'm okay with that.
Generally, it has really negative consequences long term, but short term it can be really positive. Or it can make you the goal of the IMF Bank is to like hollow, in my view, not the goal, but what it accomplishes is it kind of hollows out countries in order to make them more profitable for the existing countries. And because, well, regardless of that, and what I would fear is that you would have a similar issue with that proposal. And what I propose, like, I've thought about this similarly, is I propose an international reparations program for countries that we disadvantage through forms of imperialism. And instead of saying you can't join unless you do this, we go to them and say, "Hey, we want you to join. How can we help you get there?"
How would you deal with like a country that is mired by corruption? So basically, if you try and the people that you go to and you say, "How can we help you?" they don't give a fuck about their people and they're just ripping them off. And then if you give them anything, they're just going to take it for themselves and they won't give it to the people. How do you deal with that problem?
I think it's an issue of using soft power and making it like giving them the ability to rectify on their own. I do not like the idea of coming in and trying to bulldoze these nations. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. So how?
Okay, I don't like the idea of bulldozing these nations and saying we're correct, you have to follow us. We're giving you no choice in the matter, and you're going to go liberalize, or we're going to basically throw you out on the dirt. I think in order to engage with any kind of country, especially in the global south, I think it's important to make sure it's voluntary and to make sure it's everyone has a say in the matter. Because I think that's the only way that you're ever going to have a successful revitalization of the world.
This soft power, would it look like some kind of incentive program where they've got to meet certain like levels of not corruptness before we'll give them the money?
You're talking about soft power. I more mean like you can have like slowly influences in support of parties in countries that would seek to solve these
some of these
problems.
countries don't have parties that can run against the main party, and if you try to, you'll get shot or disappeared. So
Well, we shouldn't support if you're talking about authoritarians, we shouldn't support authoritarians in general. And I think there's a way that we can, if you gonna like propose an exact country that does not wish to fix its issues because it's mired in corruption, I think that just hauling them out and making sure they join the European Union or whatever model that you have is not going to work.
Well, I would never force anyone to join, but the thing is, if you set up these goals they've got to meet, it gives countries sort of like a path to development where their people can say, like, this is what we want to do. And even if they're not like fully democratic, the amount of power that the people do have, and people have a little bit of power in every country, they've got somewhere to aim for. And it is their choice at the end of the day where they want to aim for that. They could not join the EU. It's a voluntary joining thing.
Well, my issue with that is that I want us to have a more active role in helping them out.
But at the same time, you don't want us to have any undue influence.
I think, well, undue influence is going to happen regardless of what I want. I just want it to be as voluntary and as equitable as possible.
I think what you're describing, to me, looks just like the IMF.
Okay.
They can choose to take the loan. It's not like hard power. We're incentivizing them to
Yeah,
have, like,
I
transparency.
wouldn't propose a loan. I would propose aid.
So like the Belt and Road? Is that what you mean?
Well,
Okay,
the
that would be
Belt and
cool.
Road
Even
was
worse,
loans.
Even, well, I don't know the specifics of the Belt and Road. I prefer it to the IMF Bank, but I'm not even necessarily happy with the Belt and Road because they still carve out countries in order to just make them
So
economically profitable.
I think the Belt and Road is way worse because what they do is, at least with the IMF, we make them hire like local people to do the work so that then it's staying in their economy. Whereas
I
with the
stop
Belt
you for
and
just a
Road,
moment?
Chinese
I'm really
people
sorry.
import their workers and make the other country use the Chinese workers because the Chinese workers can then take the money back to China.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, the way that China promotes the Belt and Road, that's what I would like. Like, that's pretty cool stuff. The way that they talk about it, but in practice, it's obviously shit.
Yeah, in practice,
Well,
it's
I
a
think
debt
that
trap.
there are. I think if you get down to the specifics, I end up preferring the Belt and Road Initiative.
To the IMF?
Yeah.
Meat.
But
So you like the idea of if you default on your loan,
I didn't get
we
to
get
finish
to
my
take control
statement.
of your port.
No, I totally cut him off. I'm sorry,
Okay,
guys.
okay.
But neither of them is my preferred system. I think it should be you do this and we help you, no charge required, and you are able to build your economy how you wish. Because I think what we do with these forming countries is we form them to be as economically profitable for us in the short term, but we get more profit from trade with our fellow first world European countries and Western countries, as opposed to just hollowing out the countries that have taken IMF loans. And I want to get them on the current level of Finland, Norway, as we kind of talked about otherwise, rather than just making them subservient to us, which is what the IMF and the Belt and Road do.
What is it that you like about the Belt and Road Initiative?
I think that it's engaged in I think, well, number one, it's different. I don't not like super positive for both of them. They both have like upsides and downsides. I like the way that the Belt and Road engages with countries that have mainly been shafted.
I love it.
I think the Belt and Road are far too willing to do deals with very corrupt, despotic countries and authoritarian regimes. And I think that the way that they set up the loans means that a lot of countries won't be able to pay them back. And the debt collection clause basically says that we get to take control of the airport, the infrastructure, the dam, the ports that we built. And then again on what I said about how you're forced to use Chinese labor so you can't keep that money in your economy. I think for those three reasons, the Belt and Road is actually bad for countries.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think that it could be set up that way, but I'm not like a champion of the Belt and Road. I'm not a tanky. I just think that there are like minor differences between them, and some I might favor, some I might not. I think that either way, you need to form a better system of handling that also needs to be specific to each country. It can't just be a broad. You do this and we give you money. You need to like look at the economic problems troubling a country and seek to fix those, not just like, for example, the easiest one for the United States would be Mexico. Through our imperialism, we've devastated their infrastructure, and it's not just a broad aid that would help them out, it's our laws that would help them out largely. If I'm going to care for my Floridian brother, CTV. We need to end the drug war.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey guys, have you guys ever slept upside down?
No.
Because that's the way that meat tends to sleep. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Do you like curing?
Just when I'm not here, I have to sleep upside down to replace all the blood in my brain because I use so much of it when I go on Twitch streams. Yeah. I just wanted to come here and say what's up, y'all. I saw Yahweh was I saw Yahweh was still retaining viewers. Look at that, and you guys were still
Decent,
debating
yeah.
communism here
We're
tonight.
carrying the stream.
I can feel. Yeah, what the fuck am I doing? You know, I should have done a 12-hour stream, hosted a communism panel. No, a fucking.
We're not talking
You're
about
welcome.
communism.
You're welcome.
You know,
to
you sort of
take
are.
these
Listen, I
viewers.
can. No. I'm getting out of here. I just want to say what's up.
Hello.
I just want to say I'm fucking so happy for you that you're retaining viewers. It looks like you guys are having an interesting conversation.
It is interesting.
Something about breaking dicks and them glowing.
Oh, well, that was just between me and my chat. Or your chat? Our chat? It's our chat, because we're doing communism here, yes.
True.
Yes. So,
I'm actually heading out, but you are lying if you say this isn't about communism. Or socialism, sorry. If this
It is about socialism.
No, it totally is.
That's what I mean.
100%.
I keep calling it communism because of my views on socialism and communism.
I briefly mentioned anarcho-communism, but that's all that we talked about.
You know, anarchism, communism, they're all the same. But I'm going to say goodnight. I can tell that Richard has this conversation well at hand against the socialist armies of darkness.
Yes.
The
socialist armies of not being on camera.
But good night, you guys. I don't mean to.
So I just wanted to make sure that we haven't overstayed our welcome in your Discord channel, right?
Bro, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Just let people know that you're streaming if they come in. I don't give a fuck. I don't have there's not enough people chilling in the Discord, generally speaking, for it to be a problem. Although we're gonna change that. We're gonna change that.
Do that. Wait, hold on. Before you go, you gotta put your Discord in the chat over here, so that way I need to copy it somewhere and paste it somewhere so that I could have it, like, you know.
Hell yeah, let's go. All right, let's see. Invite people. Let me edit this link so that it's permanent.
And then I know I've already asked you guys this previously, but Cricket, Richard, and Sen, can you guys also put your Twitch channels in the chat so that I can shout you guys out like every 5 seconds?
Yeah, give me just a minute and I will do that.
Yes.
I'll consider it.
Thank you. And if you guys haven't already followed me, what the fuck are you doing here? You guys came from his channel. Why haven't you followed him yet?
I got a follower boost from somewhere. I don't know where that happened.
Like, I'm being super aggressive because it's kind of silly not to just press one button.
Hell yeah. Listen, I don't have any of my fucking shit set up. It's a fucking nightmare, alright? I'm only pretending to be a Twitch streamer.
Whatever you don't have set up, I have even less.
Hell yeah. I'm probably alright, I'm gonna post my fucking channel in here, just shout myself out. Thank you, Yahweh.
Professor Meat, you're the man.
Hell yeah. No, absolutely. Hey, you've been one of the biggest substantiators of the meat from the beginning. I gotta support you as much as I can, bud. I'm probably derailing things by coming in here. I think
we reached a good point, actually.
Yeah, it's a breath of fresh air. Breath of fresh meat.
Oh, beautiful. That's what we're here for. We're here to revitalize. We're here to revitalize this dead space with our intellectual blood flow.
Professor Meat, what is your favorite type of meat? Or are you a vegetarian?
I am not a vegetarian, but I am considering converting to ethical veganism.
Is there a non-ethical veganism?
Yes, dietary veganism. Or apparently, someone in my chat today claimed to have a justification for veganism that is purely utilitarian.
You could probably do that.
Well, especially if you're rooting it in a utilitarian framework of ethics, in which case it would basically just be ethical veganism. But it could be an interesting form of ethical veganism.
I think the economic argument for veganism is pretty strong. Like, meat is very expensive, requires a lot of land and water and resources. Yeah. It's a lot cheaper
to just make the environmental one.
and environmental.
Okay. All right. There may be some interesting utility. Listen, guys, I want to get into it. You're all invited to the veganism panel, but I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to bed.
I
Wait,
do have
have
to
you not
ask
been at bed yet?
if you did become a
What?
vegan, would you change your name?
No, absolutely not. It is metaphorical meat. There is plant meat. There is still plant meat. There's tree meat. There's meat. Meat is in all things. Meat is the space between atoms. Meat is the pull between electrons and protons. The push and the pull, the give and the take. Meat is the approximation between points. We are meat before we are born. We are meat after we are dead. Meat is the substrate. Meat is the constituent of human existence. We can't escape meat, my friends. There is no experience or observation of reality that is devoid, that is separated, that is distinguished from the meat. All right, it doesn't exist. That
Well, it was
being
nice
said,
to meet you.
yeah, it was nice to meet. It was nice to meet you. It was nice to meet you, Send Streams. I hope you, I hope you've enjoyed the conversation with meatheads, truly meatheads. Richard and Cricket, some of the most powerful meatheads. Yahweh, truly belonging in the Hall of Founders.
We actually, I was there the day you and Yahweh started talking. I was just not in chat. I was in Yahweh's chat, and then he shouted me out, and I guess you forgot about me.
I didn't. I've just been swept along on this bullshit.
True.
It has been a wild ride, right? Meat. It's been pretty cool.
Bro, it's still a wild ride. Has been a wild ride. Bro, are you kidding?
I'm not saying it's not. Go ahead.
No, I know you're not. I'm just saying, bro, I don't even know what a wild ride is. All right, listen, for any of you in chat that are sticking around, let me tell you, I don't belong here. Who the fuck am I? I've done 5 streams. All right, I've got fucking, I'm hosting panels. I've got hundreds of people in my chat. All right, I'm fucking literally Alice in Wonderland right now, motherfuckers. All right, so yeah, it has been a wild ride. All right. Yahweh, I'm happy that I could support you because I know that, I'm happy I could share. I guess that's what I'm saying. I'm happy I can share in this wild ride because you've supported me from the beginning.
Yeah.
And by the beginning, I mean
I will continue to do so.
Hell yeah, bud. You've always been, I've found a form of healthy disagreement. Even when you don't necessarily agree with me or when you have questions about my positions, it always feels like healthy, good faith discussion.
Yeah, I hope to continue to be able to do that, at least to bring something to the table, because you're definitely bringing the energy right now, and I appreciate that. I'm gonna just put it out there. I'm feeling good now. I was just about to be like, hey, I don't know if I want to do the stream anymore, but now you're making me feel like I could do another 8 hours.
Well, now I'm about to go to bed though. I came to say goodnight.
No, but
damn,
I just need a little boost. That's all.
Oh yeah. Fuck yeah! Come on, meatheads. I know you're out there. Give them some sausages in the chat. All right. Let's pump this fucker up.
Yahweh wants your sausages real bad.
Oh yeah. Feed Yahweh the sausages. Feed him the meat.
Hey,
Substantiate the meat.
Do you guys mind if Desperado Sensei joins?
Yeah. Oh, we love Desperado.
Yeah, absolutely. Fuck yeah. All right, cool. I think
it's technically an open channel, so go Desperado, go fuck yourself, guys. Desperado, hop in here. Don't even ask for permission.
But
these are
as long as you're not fucking yourself on camera, because I'm streaming, so.
No, Desperado also one of the prime meathead. I think you might have permissions to just come into the grinder. Actually, you might be a prime cut. But yeah, I'm gonna head out. Y'all. Good night, y'all.
You have a fantastic upside down sleep. Okay.
Thank you very much. Gonna go refill the brain for the night. One for the hair, one for the head, one for the hair, or one for the mouth, one for the hair. There we go. All right, keep your meat fresh.
See ya.
Bye for now. Oh, there he is. Hello.
How's it going?
Hi, Desperado.
How you doing, Desperado?
There they are. There's the meatheads. Fuck yeah.
had to drop some of them sausages. Absolutely.
We stand the meat. That's for sure. In this chat, in this VC, on this panel. Well, I saw you earlier say something, and I completely forgot because I was looking at other things on my screen, which I will not show on this screen. But did you want to introduce yourself? pronouns and or your positions on maybe what was being said earlier or anything?
Well, I'm Desperado Sensei. I live in Japan. I've lived in Japan for about 11 years now. And when it comes to capitalism and communism, I take more of the sock dem approach more than anything. But other than
get
that,
you this problem.
Pardon?
I'll get you eventually, but continue.
Okay. So the only major criticism I have of communism is I don't necessarily see how exactly it can be implemented. Is it a progression to communism? Is it a sudden revolution to communism? Exactly how is public discourse brought to want to bring communism to fruition? I just want to know the steps of how that actually works.
I think that's something you kind of just have to you're a lib first of all, so you need to go read theory, like everybody on Twitter says. No, I can't think of a clear pathway to getting there. I can only think of small incremental steps, like getting co-ops mandated in the economy.
That's largely what I focus on. And it seems like the best path that I've found is, have you heard of the tooth fairy?
Of course I have.
Well, if you get enough teeth under everyone's pillows, eventually you have communism. The only matter is where we find those teeth. And look out, liberals.
Does the tooth fairy have employees that should be unionizing, or does her business work as a co-op, or
No,
she's a self-owned business, which is a cooperative. If you if you're the one worker at a business, it's a cooperative.
Okay. How about this? If you have 100 clones of yourself, is it still a sole proprietorship? If you own the business yourself?
No, each one's a different, separate, conscious identity. So even though they're genetically the same, they each have different, ownership rights. A bit like how you and a twin aren't the same legal entity.
But you have to remember, at the same time, we're all people, my friend.
What? Not my clones. They are not people.
If you want a real answer to that question, I think that there are ways to do it in progressive, and by progressive I mean gradual manners that don't take too long, but will also not rush it so fast as in order to damage the economy. I think it's mostly a matter of getting a culture that's open to doing that, which is the issue.
Right. I've been on here for 3 hours. I didn't realize how long I've been here. So I'm fucking.
It was great talking with you.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's been a good conversation. I'm sure I will come back.
Richard, anytime, please. Yeah. We'll have to do this again, but next time on a Prime Kai's, so that way we can at least have some right wingers there, because I think that they're the ANCAPs. I would love to hear you talk about capitalism versus those guys.
I think you just like hearing Richard talk.
Well, duh. I've said that 4 times already.
Something that is very tempting is to go hardcore right wing, just to spice things up, get the viewership in, see how it goes.
Dude, you would probably do very well. Do it.
But yeah,
we've already have enough British right wingers. We don't need another Sargon.
I could be a better Sargon. I could do what he does and do it better. Right. Yeah, it's been a nice time. I'm glad that I came in here and chatted to everyone. I will see you all around in the near future, I'm sure. Have a good day.
All right, everyone who hasn't done it yet, go follow Richard.
Yeah, come follow me.
Putting it in the chat one more time.
I might stream from time to time. Now that I've got it set up, why not? It's just a button, right? Anyway. Yeah. See you around.
Oh, you've been streaming this entire time?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
That's awesome.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Anyway, see ya.
You're fine.
All right, bye for now.